Guys, what's up? Back with another one. As promised, we're doing the face-to-face thing. A lot of people seem to like this one a lot better than the gaming chats, and I kind of agree because when I am doing the gaming chats, it's a constant distraction. Now, don't get me wrong; I'm going to be doing more of the gaming videos because I actually enjoy doing them, and I don't mind making those videos. But so I promised though I'd be doing a face-to-face. So here I am, as we're going to do a 2 hour as usual. Um, do want to tell you guys the news, what's going on. Woke up, worst terrible news you can get on any day. A family member passed away early this morning. Um, so that's kind of a little difficult to have to wake up to, but these things do happen in life. I don't feel as horrible when it was an older person. It was Evie's grandmother. Evie's great-grandmother passed away. Evie's great-grandmother passed away last night. Let me see if I can bring up a quick picture to show you guys something. Oh, here's one of her. Here's one of her. Here's one of Evie's grandma right there. She passed away last night. So it's always a sad day when when you lose somebody in the family. But again, the way and this is just me, and I know it's not for everybody, but this is the way I look at it. Um, she was 86 years old. So I feel that when somebody elderly, oh, well, thank you so much there, clan. When someone passes away though in the family, hey guys, it's not hard on me. My feeling terrible is that Evie feels bad because for me, like I said, when I see and I hear that elderly people passed away, I don't look at it as a loss of life. I look at it as they finished the race, They got to the finish line, and they nailed it, give them a break. It's now they get to rest. So again, Evie's grandmother passed away. And we're going to have to send her up there early. She was going to go later on. Well, thank you so much, Fax. Thank you so much. She's going to go up there early. She was supposed to go up later on when Sip was here so that she could go hang out with their friends and everything like that and go see family up there, and Sip and I could have time. But she's going to go up early, probably in the next few days. So I'll be alone here with you guys. So I think maybe we'll try to pull off the 24-hour stream very, very soon, since I'll be by myself, and it'll be a good way. Then Evie can always check in on me all day. So we're going to try to do, I think, one full 24-hour stream in the next few days. I'll give you guys more heads up when I know dates more, and that's exactly how I feel when somebody elderly passes away. It's like, you know what? They earned it. They earned it. That's just how I look at it. They earned it. They earned the right to not worry about anything anymore, to just relax, rest, whatever it is you need. It's over. Good for you. You did it. You did it. You made it. And then I started talking to Evie, and I was like, 86 years old, that's an amazing life, She watched World War II happen, the Great Depression wrap up. She saw Vietnam, Desert Storm. She saw the moon landing. She saw the invention of like mass transportation, of mass commercial travel, of cell phones. She was a cafeteria. Can you imagine people who never could imagine the concept of the internet now seeing the technology we have today? It's mind blowing, and it's absolutely. I'm almost in a way jealous that I didn't get to live in that era to see all these amazing things happen. Thank you so much, Troy. She's gonna make a good trip. Evie's very familiar, so she'll be heading up to Ohio to handle family respects. But again, myself, I don't see it as a sad thing. It's just not when an old person. I think it's tragic when a young person passes away. That to me is a little more tragic because it was a life snuffed out short. But when an elderly person goes, it's like the burning of a candle. When the wax is gone, that's the life of the candle, and it did its purpose, and it served, and it shone bright. But now it's over. It's over, and that's okay. That's okay. And then I started thinking about some stuff about people. When this led me to an ideas of starting to think about along the lines of, why do people fear. It's kind of a hot topic right now, so I'm sorry we're going to come back to it, but I'm going to just touch on this briefly. Why do people fear guns the way they do so much? And I think the answer is because they look at guns as solely a means of death, and people are afraid of death. And I think that's why so many people are afraid of guns, is because they fear death. I myself, I'm not worried about death. It doesn't bother me. So, if it happens, it happens. And then I started thinking too, like you hear about warriors and they're like, we'll see you in Valhalla. To them, almost death is almost like a rite of passage. A what, Evie? A reward, almost a rite of passage. And, well, no, that's the sole purpose of guns, is to kill. That's kind of what it was invented for, was to level the playing field so that 3 men don't beat the crap out of you. You have the ability to defend yourself. It's not meant for killing, it's meant for defense. But that's neither here nor there. But I started thinking about how that's why. And then someone online said to me, because I'm a veteran, I'm only one argument away from going on a mass whatever. And I started thinking to myself, I was like, when it comes to psychology, generally you apply things to people based on your own experiences. So for instance, when I like to play online, you hear people insult you and stuff like that. What they're doing is they're insulting you with things they think will hurt you because it hurts them. It's a psychology thing. So you try to portray your image. So to me, it seems like when people say, oh, well, people will go crazy and go on a mass killing, it's because that's expected, what they think they would do in that situation. I could get angry and I could see this happening. It's because you expect that. You think that that's possible, but that's not how everybody thinks. But because you project onto others what you feel is your life, this is where a lot of things come in. So I think someone that says, oh, well, you would only be able to use this for evil if you got angry, is because there's someone who is quick to anger and they suspect that they know they're capable of doing so, so they think others are as well. Which, I mean, anyone's capable of anything, but generally, for the most part, I don't think responsible people in the United States think, oh man, I'm going to get angry and the first thing I'm going to go do is, take out that gas station. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Now, does it happen where people get emotionally uncontrollable and do things that are irrational? Sure. And emotional reaction seems to be the biggest problem with these things. So in the lieu of a shooting like this, while emotions are high, why would you want to make decisions while emotions are high? It's a high heightened emotion that caused this tragedy. So that's where we're going to leave that one. It's just something that I observed and thought about. It's just odd. That's all it is. It's just odd. I'm not saying people are inherently bad. I don't think people are inherently bad. I think people are inherently good with bad tendencies. And sometimes people just don't have the maturity or responsibility to kind of push through that. And, but again, I think it comes back down to fear of death. And when you have people who don't fear death, you have people who are almost untouchable because there's nothing you can take away from them. And that's how I feel like that. My life is untouchable because there's nothing anyone can do that can really upset me, hurt me, cause me anything other. Because no matter what, at the end, it doesn't matter. So that's again back why I say don't ever take life too serious. You're never going to make it out alive. But, okay, so let's get down to some fun points. What can we talk about? We talked a little seriousness there, and I don't like to usually go right to the serious stuff. Thank you so much for all the condolences for Evie's grandmother. She's right. She's more, I'll let her know she's right there. So, tragedies. Not always tragic tragedies, So, yeah. The dogs and animals, thank you to everybody who was checking on Piper and Peanut Butter yesterday. They're doing much better. Piper's up and about doing this. Well, there you go. Absolutely. Absolutely, Pat. You can't regulate the tool used by the person, because what you're really wanting is people control. You really want people control, and you can't control people. That's the very fundamental of the United States, is that we are an uncontrollable bunch. That's kind of the whole premise of the United States, is we're uncontrollable. And in that uncontrollability is how you can form order, because you can't ever sustain the foundation. You can't ever make it fit in the box you want it to. And that's good. That's a good thing. We should never be controllable. Nobody should be controllable. But when you try to overreach for safety, you give up freedoms, and freedoms for safety to me is not an exchange. I would rather, and I saw a quote from somebody, and I'm not sure the exact quoter, but I would rather live in free chaos than peaceful slavery. And I agree with that. Exactly. It's through chaos we find order, but when you remove the chaos and just want order, what you have is oppression. Order leads to oppression. Chaos leads to order, but it's not the same thing. It's not like math where x equals y, so therefore y equals z. It's not the same. You have to have the chaos to have the order, but you don't have to have. But strictly order leads to tyrannical rule, I would think. So you want to be uncontrollable, and what we need to do is let's think of a way to put it. You don't want to make rules to control people. For instance, this was a good thing, and I saw this on, I love watching Drunk History. If you guys aren't familiar with Drunk History, it's an amazing TV show. I love the way it's presented, and you learn something, so it's a lot of fun. You sound like the guy Malcolm from Jurassic Park. Well, if it rolls this way, chaos. So, I was thinking of it like this, though. Chaos theory, yes, very much. If you drop the water, which way will it roll? Chaos theory. You out of chaos comes order, not out of order. Chaos doesn't... And see, isn't it interesting, though? Out of order can come chaos, and out of chaos can come order. But either way, chaos is the one you have to have some chaos in there. It can't be, the government should never be comfortable. No government should be comfortable. They should always be trying to change things. But what I was talking about on Drunk History, let me get back to it because this is really interesting, and I think it made a very, very good point, was back in 1916 in North Boston, Massachusetts, there was it was getting ready to be Prohibition time, okay? So what the government did was there used to be, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the molasses, the Great Molasses Flood of Boston, 1916. And what molasses is used to do is you can distill molasses to make rum, okay? Now, what the government did was they made an imposition on people. They said, look, you're going to be able to limit the quantity of amounts of this you can make because it's used to do other things. So what they did, though, was they gave Molasses Company a 1-year grace period that says, look, you can make all the molasses, but then after that, it's regulated. So what the Molasses Company did was like, yo, check this out. We're going to be regulated here in just a little bit. So what we should do is we shouldn't focus on anything else other than production. Let's get our product ready. Production, which means we're going to need to build this giant container, a giant tank for all of this. Now, in the company's rush to do this, they hired an inexperienced non-contractual, someone who wasn't, what were we talking about? What was the terrible news? Evie's going to jump on and let you know in just a minute and let you know, but we've already kind of moved on from that a little bit, Tom. Evie's going to touch on and tell you. She's going to jump in the chat. So what happened was they built this tank, and they filled it with, I think, something like 200 million gallons or 2 million gallons of molasses, okay? Now, people in the town were complaining, this tank is leaking. It's not going to hold up. This tank is built wrong. And the company didn't care. They didn't care. And what wound up happening is one day, finally, of course, inadvertently, the tank ruptured, spilling out 2 million plus gallons of molasses through the city.
Thank you, just some dude.
Through the city.
I want to say thank you personally to everybody who's sent their condolences. I know Jeremy said it, but I want to say it personally. Thank you. I don't think it's hit me.
No, I don't think so either. But, again, thank you so much, Tom. So what happened was, though, is that the molasses spilled everywhere, killed some people, injured dozens of others.
Tom Healy. It reminds me of Healy from Orange is the New Black.
It's pronounced differently, though.
Helly, probably.
Yeah. So what happened was some people died from this thing. It took millions of dollars to clean up. Oh, thank you, Lucy. We haven't seen you in so long. It's so glad to help you. Everyone's saying so much.
Oh, thanks.
Like
Lucy.
Helicopter.
Oh, okay.
Heli. Okay, Heli. There we go. Helicopter.
Helicopter.
There you go.
Hella.
So what happened was, and the Clan Outing, he does some really cool BMX stuff. I just watched a video. Your cousin, Brad, went BMXing with the Clan Outing, and Brad fell down off his mountain bike. It was actually really funny, and the Clan Outing was killing
I like what Troy just said. Yeah, and he,
like that.
I will Clan Outing. Thank you. I like what Troy said. Says, I hope to reach the end of my life never needing to use my weapons in self-defense. However,
Amen.
However, I'd rather have them and never use them than need them and be defenseless.
Perfect. I myself have never had to use my weapon in self-defense, and I am so grateful for that. Grateful. But should the day ever arrive where I need it, I would never want to be found wanting. Now, back to the molasses story. Let me finish up what I'm saying on here so we can get to the point. Now, so all this molasses spills out, people dead, cleanup took millions of dollars, equivalent inflation, and people in North Boston still say today on warm summers they can smell molasses down by the harbor. Marine life was destroyed down by the harbor. Again, 14 people killed, 14 people killed. Now, the point of all this is you're saying, oh, well, molasses was the killer. Okay, molasses is what actually took people's life. Did they ban molasses? No, and let me explain why. What we eventually did was instead of banning molasses, we found
Ipecac.
Okay, kind of. Yeah, people were misusing it. But the point with the molasses, though, is that we didn't ban molasses, even though it could be misused to kill people. What we did, though, was we put in place regulations and measures to make sure that the storage containing this amount of molasses will always meet standards. So what we did was we put standards on how it is you need to handle this. There's already standards in place. What we need is law enforcement to do their job. We need people doing their jobs. What happened with the Florida thing was not a lack of gun laws being implemented to stop this from happening. What we have is a lack of people doing their jobs correctly. And when people fail to do their jobs correctly, this is what happens. It's accidents. Accidents happen. And I wouldn't say it's an accident. Tragedy happens when people fail to do their job correctly. If a doctor fails to do his job correctly, a patient can die. We don't ban IVs. We blame the doctor. We blame the doctor. But yeah, so you see how it's tools. You don't implement rules on, and that's the freedom of America. And it's, again, I would rather live in a state of free chaos than a life of peaceful slavery. Because I was talking to a friend online last night, and he sent me over something about. And actually, I want to read it. I want to read. This is something I want to start doing. I want you guys to start seeing. And again, I talk with everybody. So people that I know from the military, not all of them have the same views as me. But I can appreciate when people do, at least will speak to me about it. But this is a point I wanted to get to. So I'm going to bring this up, and I'm going to let you guys hear. And you guys tell me what you think about it. Excusez-moi. We might learn something, too, here. You never know. That doesn't happen much on this channel. We don't learn a whole lot. We stay away. We shelter away from learning because education doesn't do anything for anybody. Let's see. Where did he go? Where did you go? My lovely, I want to know. Let's see if I can find it. Well, anyway, the posting was about this. It said something along the lines of, why should, if in the military we're required on post to lock up our private firearms and, we can't have access to this and that and the other, why should we have untrained civilians having similar weapons? And then I was talking to the guy, and I was like, it's a slippery slope when you start applying military standards to civilian life. So I was telling him, I was like, would you be then, if we're going to apply the military standards of weapon control, what other aspects of military life should we apply to the civilian life that you would be comfortable with? And I asked him, I said, would you be okay with doing health and welfare inspections? Which, in the military, if you guys aren't familiar with what a health and welfare inspection is, it's basically where they come into your room, go through all your stuff, and if they find something, you're in trouble. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Now, in the civilian life, we call that an illegal search and seizure because they come in and they can go through anything they want and there's very little you can do. There's some protections you can use against yourself, but very, very little. It is invasive. It very is much invasive, but you can't do anything about it. They go through your drawers, they go through your clothes, they can open up anything they want. It's their barracks. They own it. It's what I subjected myself to when I said I would be part of this. And,
And they can come into your house, like, off of post.
Now, off of post, too, yeah, even so much so that they were able to tell me that this house that I own, the military is able to set foot in common areas in this home. Under military regulations, I had to let them into my house. I didn't have to let them into my private bedroom, but I did have to let them into the house. By law. By military standards. I had to. So,
the nice thing was, I gotta say.
But, yeah, that was nice. Evie is not subjected to those laws, so she was able to say. Now, granted, though, the person who came to inspect my home was a good friend of mine. My sergeant was an NCO who was a nice guy. He knew I was good. He'd been to my house plenty of times to hang out. I always used to throw parties here. Everybody was at my house all the time. So,
we were the local hangout.
Yeah, so everyone came here, so it wasn't a big deal. So these things never bothered me, especially in the military, because I was always on my P's and Q's. So it didn't, duty-wise, I was a model soldier. Personalized, maybe not so much. But the point is, though, is that I asked him, I said, what other freedoms, then, would you be willing to give up? So we know illegal search and seizure is not something he would be comfortable with, because that already violates our Constitution. So that's not an aspect of the military life that we can apply to the civilian life. And I said, okay, then what about... what else can we do in the military? What about forced extra work with no additional pay? Forced extra work with no additional pay. Nobody in the world would do that. Nobody would do that. Right, absolutely. Like, the health standards. Someone came in and inspected, but the difference is, though, is that they agreed to those when they were subjected. I was informed that this will be happening. You don't have to let the health and welfare inspector in. What's going to happen, though, is if you don't, there's consequences to that. So you have a choice. In the military, I had no choice. They were coming in my room whether I liked it or not. Whether I said, no, you're not. There's no way to appeal, fight, stop, disdain, anything. There's nothing you can do. Nothing. So then I said to him, of course, about what was the other thing I said? I just said about the forced work without extra pay. Yes, the military can force you to do extra work. You're never guaranteed when. In a work week in the military, without being at war, generally I was at work anywhere, let's say, with PT, we'll say an hour and a half there. That's 15 hours of PT a week, 9 to 5, 1 hour for lunch, takes off to 7 hours a day. That's 35. We're at 47. Maybe you catch a staff duty, so you're at 60, 71 hour work weeks. Generally, a 71 hour work week was 50 to 71 hours work week. So there's a difference of 21 hours in a week that could be subject to change of more work with no additional pay. I don't think anybody in the United States would be up to that. Then I hit him with the point. I said, now, what about sexual relations? The military has a lot of rules on sexual relations. In fact, if you actually look at the Army Standard Manual, they give you the position that you're actually authorized to have sexual relations in with your partner. And the only authorized position, technically by military standards, is missionary is the only authorized position. Now, where that comes down to is how do you enforce that one, since no one can be privately. So that one is kind of like one of those ones that's up in the air. But however, I mean, technically, if you were somehow managed to be caught, I guess they could process you if they really truly wanted to. And then if you say an affair, that's something I do think that's interesting, though, is that if you have an affair with a married person in the military, the troubles that you can get into, oh my gosh, you can lose money. You can lose time. They can take rank. They can do so much to you for having an extramarital affair. It's terrible. They can ruin your life in the military. Your career can become horrible. So if we want to apply those standards to people, okay. But you have to remember, too, that the military lifestyle is very much a socialist lifestyle, and it comes back to peaceful slavery. The military, almost in a way, is a very strong... It's -2 in the UK. Woo! That feels cold, buddy. I can feel you chilly all right. Why do you want that kind of life in an army? Because it provides order. Because that's socialism. The military is the most socialist organization ever. But they also realize that they have to be. You never know. Have you ever understood what it's like to have someone placed in a position of authority over you who is incapable of the position, but because they've been there longer, they're in an authoritative position? That's what you have to deal with the military. You have to submit yourself to lesser understandings. But it was something I chose because it opened more doors to me than it closed. It opened far more doors than it closed in the end. But I had to subject myself to a socialist lifestyle. Now, was it fun? Sure. Did I have freedoms? No. Did I lose certain constitutional rights when I joined the military? Yes. I subjected myself to freedom of speech. I lost the freedom of speech. I lost the freedom to carry a weapon on myself. Freedom is gone. Your freedoms are taken away from you. You have no freedoms in the military. But that's what they need. They need to take your chaos, and out of chaos, they can derive order. And that's how the military works. They derive the order out of the chaos. And then we take that order and we go to some other country and we cause some chaos, and then they can have some order. Not necessarily, that's not exactly, like tea, but I'm just giving you an example. The point is, though, is that you can't apply military standards to civilian lives and ask why. Why does it work here and not there? It's because the rules and punishments that are implemented. The rules and the punishments are different, and what you subject yourself to. So I think that was an argument. A friend of mine who I'm very, very close to, and he's a good guy, great man. I respect him a ton. I respect his opinion I respect his opinion, but I don't agree with it. And he is an immigrant to this country. So rules and understanding, I'm starting to find out about things, are a little unclear to people who haven't been around them their whole lives. You know what? It would be chaos, and it seems very chaotic, but it shows how quickly, when you control every aspect, how do they implement this control against you? They take your money. Can you imagine if you went to a job and you said, you know what? No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that today. And they said, well, fine. You're not going to do it. We're just going to cut your pay in half for 2 months. We'll just cut your pay in 2 months in half, and then you don't have to do it. You just don't get paid. But you've already done the work. You've already done the work, and you're going to keep working. You're just not going to do that, but we're going to cut your pay in half. It happens. So they use money to control you. So in a socialist government, remember, when the government is giving you everything, if they want to take that away to control you, they can. This is why a great thing about guns as a potent is that if a government ever became authoritative or tyrannical, you don't have to deal with it. You don't have to accept it. It gives you a choice. Now, that choice may not give you the options you want, but it's your choice. So there we go. Military life is very different than what people think it's. Look, I don't even get to choose what clothes I wear, but I kind of like that. For me, I'm very much a person of order, of consistency, of a routine. I like routines. Routines work for me. If we could apply a socialist standard to everybody like the military does, the world would be, I think, a little bit better. But do remember, everybody in the military could get access to weapons. You know what, though? No. I'm going to say this, too. When people were talking about you can't even have. The only people on a military base, really, that have guns are the MPs. So when people talk about military being armed and trained, do you know how hard it would be to get a hold of a weapon on post? Damn near impossible to get a hold of a private military weapons. Damn near impossible. Let alone try to defend yourself on post. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but I'm going to say it anyway because no one told me not to. We had 10 bullets to protect all of us in my company. So God forbid there was an active shooter situation like there was on Fort Hood some years ago, in which the guy went to an M-processing center where nobody has weapons because everybody's M-processing. We had 10 bullets to defend all of us, which means I could give out 3 to 3 people with 1 for myself, or I could put 10 in one magazine and hope that the person I gave it to is a clean enough shot to handle everything that could come our way. That's the U.S. government, and we're not allowed to have weapons, which is terrible. And that's a socialist government. Oh, you can have guns, you just have to have them taken away from you when you're not using them. When do you know you're going to need to use it? You know? Safes are nice, and locking the ammo and safely stored, that's nice all in concept. But in theory, it sounds good on paper. But when you apply real-world chaos to a system of order, what you're going to find out is the chaos is going to win. The chaos will take down the order all the time. Once you crack a foundation of order, it's no longer an order. See? Exactly. 10 bullets to defend 30 people. 10 bullets to defend. If I could get to the bullets, that's, it's going to take me a good 15 minutes to be able to get the process I needed to unlock the storage area to get to those bullets. That's going to take it. That's a process in itself. God forbid, though, the person who unlocks that room isn't available or is gone somewhere, then we have no access and there's no way to get to it. We would be at the mercy. So even military in a socialist area, in a socialist army, there's guns, but very few people have access to them. Very few people. And one person wanting to cause harm can do far more damage than people who don't want to and just want to stop it. So I think that's where we have to get into that aspect of understanding that you have to be ready for anything and hope that nothing. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. You know, it's... Of course, though, I would say this, with 10 bullets, usually the sight of something like that would be enough to deter somebody. They're going to want to go after a target that's not going to cause issues. You want to go for a soft target. This is in the military. They taught us about making your target hard. And you might have heard this on the news if you've been following, making a hard target. Hardening a target is the first deterrent to somebody. They're going to want to go to something that's going to be more easily able to perform what you want to get done. So it's a shame when people say, oh, well, we don't want... Somebody told me that they don't want veterans around their kids. And I was like, do you not realize how many teachers are veterans? How many teachers are already veterans? Millions. There are millions of veterans. And I think it's funny as the guy was, I guess, just thinking Iraq and Afghanistan as veterans. But we still have Vietnam veterans still around. We still have Desert Storm veterans all over the place. My dad being one of them. Somebody asked, is Mark Greenbaum my father? And I was like, yeah, he is. So, now there are two Mark Greenbaums, so don't get that confused. So it's just things like this. It's just things like that. It comes down to, I guess, again, we go right back to the word I've said before, respect. Because nobody has one. Well, I mean, that's true, Tom. You don't have to defend yourself with weapons, but people have them. In fact, let's do this. Netherlands. And I think that's something else people get confused is gun crime and violent crime. But what's your violent crime like in the Netherlands? Gun crime. Let's see. Does Netherlands... Nobody has guns. They're supposed to. So, people... So what I'm saying is we get back to that. Also in the Netherlands, you guys have a different constitution than ours. Somebody was talking last night about... why we have a gun culture in the United States. And it's because guns have been part of our history since the very beginning. America was founded. Okay. Let's see. Now, the site I'm looking at is saying that the United States, the Netherlands comes in 12th. Age of criminal responsibility, United States is ranked 58th. But that's not adjusting for capita. Which means we have more people. Now see though, it says that you guys have a total of 1.4 million total crimes a year. In America, we have 11.88, but we also have a population of at least, I would say, 12 times that of the Netherlands. 17 million people. So yeah, we've got you guys. So when you adjust for inflation of capita, because we have over 400 million people in the United States, when you actually balance it out, I think we're actually lower in violent crimes than you are. So when you adjust for capita, which they don't like to, violent crimes, yep. When you adjust per million people, 92.74. So it's 3 times more violent crimes, rapes per million people. We are 3 times more than the Netherlands, but we have a population of over 20 times more. So when you adjust for inflation, you guys have it worse. You guys have it far worse when we adjust for population total. So there's something you got to look at the numbers. Now, if that was the case, there should be 0. See, and that's how they mislead information. They tell you, oh, well, there's only this many here and this many here, therefore. Well, there you go. And there you go. And there's where I think the biggest thing comes in. They say, oh, well, look how many crimes are committed over in this country, and then look over in this country. And that's fine. That's great, Tom. But do also remember this, though, that the Netherlands, when people talk about guns, as the Netherlands, you guys enjoy the protection of the United States defense budget. So, in the end, guns are still protecting you. They're just not in the private hands of citizens maybe as much, but there's still gun violence in the Netherlands, which means that guns are still there. They're still getting into the hands of people who don't care about the law. And I think that's where it really comes into effect, is that laws are only good if we're willing to enforce them, and they only stop the honest person. Someone who doesn't care about the law won't care about a new law that says they can't do something. So like I said, it's all about when you adjust for capita, which this website did not. And it was the nationalmaster.com was where I was getting it. And it was United States versus Netherlands crime statistics. And again, when you adjust for capita of people, you start seeing that we're not as bad. For instance, how about this? Annual cannabis use. You guys are 5.4%, ranked 6th in the world. We're ranked 13.7. I guarantee our population of marijuana users outranks the number of people you have total in your country. Justice system punishment. Capital punishment last year, executions. You guys had 1,952, ranked 20th. We had 2,000. So only a difference, 3% more than the Netherlands with over a 20 times percent population. So you guys put a lot of people to death in your country, way more than we do. The murder rate, 9.3 for you to our 5. Again, we adjust for inflation of numbers of people. You guys are somewhere actually at 20. Police officers, we come in at 243.6, 271 times more than the Netherlands with that 1%. So you guys have us on that. The rape statistics, you guys have 9.2, ranked 25th, 27.3, 3 times more than there. We adjust for the inflation. You guys have more than that. Total crimes, 1.4 million, ranked 13th. We are 11.88 million, 8 times more. Again, we adjust for inflation, 20 times. You guys are worse in total crimes. Violent crimes, here's where it gets interesting. 3.9, ranked 104th for the Netherlands. 88, 23 more times. We adjust. You guys are almost on the same level. But they're mixing violent crimes and gun crimes together. So you guys actually have 3.9, 4 gun violent crimes a year. So the guns are there. And it's still happening. And again, when we adjust for inflation, goes to 4. 4 times 20 is 80. You're on par with us. You're on par with us. And we're not banned, and you are. So your gun violence is the same when we adjust for capita. You have equal amount of gun violence than we do per 100,000 people. I mean, and I don't want you guys to take my word for it. Don't believe me. There's the website. There's the numbers. There you go. See, so right here it says 3.9, 107th. 88, and that's violent crimes, which include gun crimes. And when we adjust 23 times higher, and we know we roughly have a population of about 20 times more, so when we adjust for population, you guys are right on par with us. So your banning of weapons did nothing to prevent gun crime. We don't have a ban on guns, and it's the same. It's manipulation of numbers, and they're smart. They're smart at that, but we see through it. We see through the lies. Or we see through, when you only present half the story, all that people are going to get is half the information. But we see through it because we can talk about it. And that's what makes it interesting, is we can have a civil discussion. A civil discussion. So, yeah, that isn't that interesting, though, when numbers are presented to you in a certain way, but you actually take the time to question. When someone tells me something, my first thing is not a statement to respond. My first statement to anything when someone wants to tell me a piece of information is the first thing out of your mouth should be a question. Always a question. When someone tells you a piece of information, there should always be a question following it. What's this? What about that? What do you mean by this? Make them define. Make them boil down their statement and then argue the statement once it's been boiled down, because then you have a better understanding of what you're talking about. And so I think that's an interesting thing. Oh, absolutely. History is written by the winners, as it should be. They're the winners. People have been doing horrible things to each other throughout history, and it's amazing that only in the last 100 years do we think guns are the reason. People have been killing each other with other means necessary. Rocks turned into sharper rocks. Sharp rocks turned into knives. Knives turned into guns. It's just the evolution of things. Guns will eventually turn into chemical and biological warfare. No one's out there banning germs. I mean, it's already, we don't want germs, but we do measures to protect against them. But if we just put a law out that said getting sick is against the law, would it stop people from getting sick? No, that's ridiculous. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. If we banned getting sick and we told people it's against the law now to have a fever, you cannot have a fever. Do you think people are just going to stop having fevers? No, because it's a natural biological function. Same as being everybody has evil in them. Everyone has the capability and the capacity to do evil. The difference is, though, is our morals that are implied to us. Because if we go back to caveman days, what do you really have to do? You have to eat, sleep, reproduce, and survive. Those are the 4 basic functions of any living organism. Now, what we do is we've applied rules to that so that that's not interfered with, because reproduction, say there's a smaller person who's reproducing and you want to remove them from that. If you were a larger person, you could. You could remove them and stop their ability to do what's humanly nature to them. You could. And wear a loincloth. Absolutely. Absolutely. But because we've implemented a system of where this piece of this technology, this tool, puts everybody on a level playing field. Here's another thing I wanted to bring up that's really interesting. We talk about gun deaths, related gun deaths in the United States. And I've been looking into it. And roughly there's about 30,000. Isn't it right, Guy? Absolutely, Tom. We're cool guys. We're chill. We're relaxed. But the point is, okay, so back to it, though. There's 30,000 gun deaths related a year. Now, when you remove suicides out of that number statistic, you're looking anywhere between 12 and 16,000 people. So there's 12 and 16,000 people related to gun deaths every year. But what they don't want to tell you is the numbers of how many instances of life-saving instances there were using these weapons. And when you use I believe it's called the CDC, and it's not to be mistaken with the Center for Disease Control. It's another organization. You can do CDC gun lives saved with gun statistics. Their statistics bottom barrel is 500,000 with the top end of anywhere from 300 million. So when you look at the statistics of people that are harmed by guns against the law, you got about 16. We'll give the top, and I'm going to use the bottom number. And then when we flip to the other side of that coin, law-abiding citizens using ththese weapons to defend themselves were in a number of roughly 500,000 in America. So you see an offset of roughly 484,000 offset lives that were protected and or saved by the gun. So to and these are mostly ARs. And those are a lot of gun statistics, ARs, pistols. But the problem is, though, is that when you start talking about banning an assault rifle, the problem is, though, is that there's no such thing as an assault rifle, so we have to define what is an assault rifle. And when people start giving me their ideas of what an assault rifle, a gun that shoots rapid fire, I was like, okay, well, that's a semi-automatic. Now what you've said is what you want to do is ban semi-automatics. So the way to do that, though, is that you have to remember a handgun is a semi-automatic, rifles are a semi-automatic, most hunting rifles are semi-automatic. So what you're really saying is you want to ban everything but shotguns and bolt actions. And the problem with that then is that those aren't always capable. Okay, for instance, when people say you don't need an AR-15, you can have a shotgun. A shotgun won't work for me. Okay, let me explain why. My shoulder. Okay, I cannot put a shotgun up to my shoulder. A nice good 12 gauge that would probably handle anything I need to cover spread. I can't do it. It would kill my arm in one shot. But I can handle a little AR that I can snug it in kind of a little closer. I'm a little more comfortable. That weapon functions for me for home dogs. I'm going to be honest with you. An AR-15 or an M4 for hunting would not be practical. It wouldn't be practical at all. It would be actually very bad. You would really wound the animal and cause it a lot more unnecessary pain if you used a smaller caliber like that. You actually need something like a 30-06 to properly take down, which no one is saying they would ban a 30-06 because it's a hunting rifle, but it's also a semi-automatic. Now, then people say, well, you don't need to use the military-looking ones, But then again, though, I posted up a picture and I said, this is a Ruger M14 Ranch. It has all the same characteristics. Well, see, though, here's the thing, though. There's where we've talked about how English language works before. You have to remember something, Pat, that there is no such thing as an assault rifle because the word assault is not a noun. It's a verb. It's an action. Meow, says Aaron Beaveridge. It's an action. It's a verb. You can't verb a rifle, okay? Can't do it. Semi-autos then. Okay, cool. Woof. Now he's on woof. Good, good. So how do we ban semi-autos? Good. Now we have the correct terminology. See how they like to play the words and we get in the wrong words, and then when you say one thing and people are like, wait, that doesn't exist, and they're arguing, but we haven't even established what we really mean. The problem is, though, is that one person has bad information. I have good information. I'm arguing from a stance of good information. They're arguing from a stance of bad information. So what we have is an immediate argument of wrong information on somebody, which no one's going to win because bad information. So when we start putting out, how do we ban a semi-auto X? You don't. It's never going to happen. What does the fox say? Ming, 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 ming. So no, there's no way. It's gone. Thank you so much, David. Evie can hear you. We appreciate our regards. She's gonna head up there to go to the Sure, if you absolutely wrong, because it's not an assault rifle. Remember, you're saying an assault rifle. Assault is a verb. You can't use a verb when we're speaking about a noun. Okay, you can't verb a noun. I mean, I guess you can. I guess you could. But it's still a verb. So assaulting is a verb. If I assault somebody, I don't need a rifle to assault somebody. I can throw my cat at you. And is that assault cat? No. It's a cat that assaulted you. I am a person that assaulted you with a weapon. Whatever that weapon means is not the weapon's fault. It's me. An assault helicopter? No such thing. There's an attack helicopter. There's a helicopters made specifically for attacking. There's also helicopters that are made specifically for none. Like an Apache. That's an attack helicopter, not an assault helicopter. Again, assault is a verb. You would use an attack helicopter to assault a position. A help rifle. See, there we go. I like to call it my boomstick. It's my boomstick. Blue steel, wood grain stock, smart. Shop S Smart. So there you go. My bomb stick. I like it. My bomb stick. Right? Oh, well, great movie. Great movie. If any one of you medieval hillbillies even thinks about touching me. Ah! And then he turns around. Boom! Smart. That's smart. That movie's great. Bruce Campbell is one of my favorite actors of all time. I loved him in Hercules, Hercules, The Legendary Journeys. He was the Prince of Thieves in that show, as well as Xena, Princess Warrior from back in the day. My favorite scene in that movie, too, is when the little ones jump inside of him and, how about some hot cocoa? Ah. Aaron, I love those. I love all your animal sounds. Now, see, do remember, though, that... Now, here's something cool, guys. If you know the movie Evil Dead. Evil Dead is the sequel. Actually, hold on. Did someone say that? Actually, Pat. Evil Dead, good call. Actually, Pat, that would be Army of Darkness, not Evil Dead. So we were wrong on that one. It wasn't, he said that, blue, steel, custom wood grain, cherry, shop smart, S Smart. That was actually from Army of Darkness, not Evil Dead. Evil Dead 1 was made, filmed here in Tennessee. My dad has a little vial of the ashes from the fireplace, from the actual fireplace that they tried to burn the Necronomicon in that movie. And it's a huge historic site. It's one of our few Tennessee horror movies, right up there with Deliverance. So Evil Dead 1 was made. They were trying to go for a horror aspect. And what happened was when they made the movie, they found out that this isn't a horror movie. This is a comedy. So they remade it as Evil Dead 2, but it wasn't a sequel. It was a remake, a redesigning, a reimagining of the same movie under a different title, Evil Dead 2, where they realized this is a comedy. Let's not try to play it off as a serious role. Let's put some scary stuff into it, but make it funny. And that's what they did. And then they were able to come up... Absolutely. It's more of a revamping. They realized we didn't make a horror movie, we made a comedy. Now we need to apply the writing to match what we made. Because it was funny. It was a funny movie. Even the original is just hilarious. It's hilarious to watch. And then they went ahead and they went with the more comedy aspect writing of it. And then they made the sequel to Evil Dead 2, which was Army of Darkness. Which was a great movie. Fun, exciting. Bring the kids, grandkids, they'll love it. Good movie. I don't believe there's a whole lot of swearing. I think the movie's PG. My grandpa let me watch it. I enjoyed the movie. I think it was great. But yeah, there you go. That's just interesting to think of, though, isn't it, guys? So I don't want to get stuck on gun control topics because we're talking so much about it. I want to find something else we can talk about. I've started Ash versus the Evil Dead. I started watching an episode, but it was just kind of getting hard to get into. So I'm having a little bit of trouble. I started a few. I'm going to try to get it going. Someone said let it get rolling a few episodes and it'll get better. It was just a little more, I don't know, almost over the top with it. Yes, Ash versus the Evil Dead or something. It was just a little more over the top than what I was comfortable with. Now, the remake of Evil Dead that they made the remake, and they went straight horror on it, and I'm not going to lie to you, it was okay. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. But I wish they could have kept some of the comedy in it and tried to pay a little more homage to the original instead of just trying to remake everything. Everything's getting rebooted today, and what it is because the 90s are coming full circle. And the last generation, we kind of went through an 80s thing of big baggy pants, and now it's kind of coming back to the tiny waist and the higher, women wearing their pants a little higher like they used to in the 90s. And what you just say is you just see generations just make circles, and that's all it is. And if you pay enough attention to the trends, like for instance, the haircuts, the clothes, all of that of the 90s are kind of coming back. Now, in the next generation, they're going to kind of have maybe, I guarantee we'll start seeing the whole, I guarantee in the next 10 years, we're going to see the whole boy band thing explode again. Because it'll be that time frame to do it again, around the 2000s coming around full circle again. You can look to the past to always see what's going to happen in the future, and that's how people playing the stock market do it, is they look at the past things. It doesn't change. There's actually a formula, I forget what it's called specifically, but it says that if you look at a graph, and you see like a graph and it goes up and down, and you were able to specifically zoom in on one small area and break that small area into a full graph, again, you'll see the same pattern of up and down. And if you zoom in farther on that pattern, you'll see the same pattern of up and down. Patterns don't change. They just, the closer you look, when you finally look, my apologies, first interruption. So when you look closer at it though, you'll see that there's just a pattern. So when people play the stock market, they monitor those numbers very, very carefully. They know when to buy when it's low, and they know when to sell when it's high. And when you can monitor it down very small, you'll know the trends. When you can learn the trends, that's it. It's just like someone who was able to predict weather patterns. If you're able to predict weather patterns on how harsh or how easy a winter is going to be, you'll be able to predict the cost of heating oil. And if you could invest in heating oil, knowing the information is deadly. People don't realize that the gathering and putting together of information is what makes the world go round. It's not always necessarily the hard work you could do. Hard work is a good aspect. Thank you so much, Gary. We appreciate it. It's not so much just hard work that's going to get you by. It's recognizing, knowing, information, a gathering of information. When you start gathering a database, what you're collecting is info. And information is what makes things that can be, puts the wheels of motion. Information is the motion in the wheel. The wheel is the work. Information is the motion applied to the wheel to get it working. That's, I think, what you got to realize. So when people are gathering, for instance, just putting together information, you're gathering ability to function better. So like I said, when you look at things like this, so when we look at our times and our history of what's going on, you can just look to see what the trends look like based on what's going on. And that's all it is. I'd say we're kind of almost at about 1988, roughly flip around, where we're back to a presidency of a Reagan presidency about 1998, 99. So yeah, oh, Butterball. She's doing much better. She's going to have to, she gets her pain medicine here in about 4 hours, as well as Piper does, but they've been sleeping so well. So it's been actually really calm, really peaceful here. At least for the last few days. Well, a day and a half. But so that guys, it's just things to consider. Now, do I know everything? No, don't take my word for anything. You should question everything. We already talked about that. You should question me. Everything I say, you should question. Well, Tyler, the first part of the video is I was just letting everybody know that we had a tragic loss in the family. Evie's great-grandmother passed away. And now we're just kind of discussing nothing. We've gone over some movies and some thoughts I have on guns. And it's been just kind of off. We went over some crime statistics. And it's really interesting. I think we're having an actual debate. This is almost a little too adult for me. We're actually being serious, and I don't think I like it. I don't like it very much. So we're usually very lighthearted, and I don't get on subjects that others find controversial. Although it's one of my favorite things to talk about. I love talking about controversial topics. It's just so much more fun. And I think that's great too, is you can't ever, if you're going to have a real debate with somebody, you have to remove your opinion from it. And that's what I think a lot of people can't do, is they can't remove their opinion of it. Now, I can remove my opinion from conversations and have a conversation with somebody without opinion, but when we do a conversation without opinion, we can only do it on fact, and I know lots and lots of facts, and I'm able to find the facts I don't know, so I'm very comfortable arguing. I'll let her know she's going to head up to her up there for the funeral, so she'll be gone here in a few days, and I'll have no adult responsibilities for a while, no adult supervision. So that's going to be, unfortunately, in her case, but for me it'll be a little enjoyable. Absolutely. And I love challenging, making people, I love when you see you've got somebody and they've said something and they don't understand, and you see their brain trying to conflict with their personal beliefs and what they just said. When you hit them in that point, you've won. You've won. And it happens quite a bit. I remember I was watching something on a guy, and he was talking about how, I think they were talking about feminism. And here's something, too. It says on YouTube, and I don't know how well I can trust it, that I've lost all my female viewing audience, which I know isn't true, because I know Anne still comes by to watch. So I think I may have upset some of my female audience with my opinion, and they fled my YouTube channel. And I think that's some of the subscribers I lost, because I said something opposite of what they feel about gun control, or when we had the last talk where I said this is gonna get a lot of thumbs down. Since that video, I think I've lost almost 13% of my viewing audience, which were female. But can't please everybody, I guess. But that means it's just the boys. The boys will hang out and talk. Which I want to be inclusive to everybody. Everybody's opinions. So here's something someone talked about too. Okay, let me get back to it, because I'm bouncing around here. Someone was talking about how. No, we're not going to get on that subject. I don't want to do that one. That's not what I want to talk about. Absolutely. Can't handle change. Change is uncomfortable. But I did hear this one guy, he was a Jewish rabbi, and he was talking about lobsters. And he says, why do lobsters... Here's the daily life of a lobster. Lobster goes around doing its lobstery business, but then it starts getting uncomfortable in its shell. So it goes under a rock to hide from predators, and then it sheds its shell, grows a larger one, goes out to do its lobstery business, and repeats this process. But the question is that what prompts the lobster to go under the rock to shed its shell? And it's uncomfortability. Uncomfortability promotes growth. The lobster has to feel uncomfortable to grow. Now, if we sent a lobster to a doctor, and the doctor said to the lobster what seems to be the problem, the lobster says, I'm uncomfortable, I'm in a little bit of pain, I don't feel good. The doctor would recommend a pill and say, here's a pill that's going to stop that bad feeling. Now, the lobster's going to feel like, oh, good, now the pain has stopped, I don't have any more pain. Well, you're not growing anymore because you've just dulled yourself. So the point is, though, is that dulling and the lobster won't grow. So you can't take away pain is a natural sensation. It tells you what's working and what's not. When something's painful, your brain learns. Pain is actually learned, what is it? Not pain. I don't want to use pain. I want to use, let's see. Negative reinforcement works 10 times faster than positive reinforcement. Okay, so that's a fact. Okay. Well, that's true too. People feel displaced easily when they don't have the creature comforts that they feel they should have. So it's not so much an issue as they feel uncomfortable. Right, people feel displaced and they're uncomfortable, but you're not uncomfortable, you're just doing what you're supposed to do. So kind of lost track where I was going with that. Hold on, I have to go back and see. I was on a point and I lost it. It was a really interesting point. Uncomfortability, though, is the point of it all, though. You have to be uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable is going to prop change. The lobster, I think we finished up with the lobster thing. If we told a lobster not to shed, it wouldn't grow. And then it would just become confined and constricted, and it would need more pills to constantly figure out why it's in more pain, when really it's just a natural process that needs to just go, and sometimes pain is part of growth. But what I was saying was, though, is negative reinforcement works faster than positive reinforcement. For instance, we see this in children. If you constantly praise a child for doing well, that's good, and the child will eventually develop those skills to do so. However, though, negative reinforcement, which again, though, positive reinforcement and negative does not mean bad or good. It means negative and positive. It's how the brain views something. For instance, if you have a hot stove and a child touches it, it burns the child. The child's brain remembers that's hot. It remembers that it causes pain. This is negative reinforcement. The child quickly learns not to touch the hot stove again. Your brain will learn that 10 times faster, will pick up on things 10 times faster than if we said, listen, don't touch the stove, my sweetie. You're so smart. I know you're not going to, okay? That kind of teaching won't work as fast as you'll quickly learn. You'll quickly learn. It's the same thing as eating something nasty you don't like. You eat something, you put it in your mouth, you're like, oh God, that's gross. That's your body's way of quickly learning, I don't like that. There you go. See, Bubbles? See, Bub? That's it. Oh, look, Bub and Tom are together. You guys are finally in the same chat room. You guys are both from the Netherlands. I got my Netherlands peoples here. Yay! That's pretty cool. That's just interesting to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Don't touch the stove, moron. Right? Exactly. You know, and I'm not going to lie to you. When I was, if I was with my dad in public somewhere and I said or did something really stupid, he didn't hurt me, but he went, hey, don't do that. That little pop against the back of the head, while it doesn't cause any real damage, it's a pain. It's a little bit of pain to the brain. Hey, I shouldn't do that. And your brain will remember that quickly. So when dads used to pop kids, hey, shut up, listen to your mother, pow. That's negative reinforcement. Not a bad thing. It's actually behavior modification, which is a good thing. Nothing wrong with that. So, same thing with dogs. Absolutely. People think that because we have more intelligence, we're smarter than dogs. We have a higher level of consciousness, but dogs learn the same thing. I don't know. My dog gets things pretty quick. I have idiot friends that I have to tell you, dude, why in the hell would you do that? Absolutely. They nip at each other. It's the, hey, don't do that. Same thing. See, it's the same thing. And people think that. Now, did you also know that there's also, I'm not saying it's 100% true, but there's some people out there who say that some people may have evolved from dogs. Dogs' vocal cords are all, you know your dog can talk? Your dog could talk to you right now if it wanted to. Just the same way I am speaking to you. We have the same vocal cords. They just don't have the intelligence to manipulate those vocal cords into a reasonable sound. But some dogs that are a little smarter, higher intelligence, huskies, German shepherds, they actually can control their vocal cords to an extent. Same with African Greys. They are able to control their communication to an extent. It's a lot of training, but what they can remember is where it comes to. But basically, though, when you really look at it, though, if you shifted a dog's hips and then remove the tail, bring in the nose, that's a person. Everything's in the same place. It's not too hard to think. It's just an idea. It's not true. I don't know if it's true or not. I can't say because I wasn't there when I watched the first man dog. Absolutely. See, yeah, I would rather have someone just give me a quick bit of pain than cause embarrassment. Embarrassment. I mean, that would work though. That too would be negative reinforcement, but that might cause resentment. A little pop to the head, hey, and that's over. But the message was received, right? I don't know. To me, I think people look at pain as a bad thing in our society. Pain has become something we should avoid at all costs. And again, I guess that comes back to where we were talking about the lobster. If we avoided all pain for the lobster would never grow. And we'd be stuck with small lobster claws, which nobody wants a small lobster claw when you go to Red Lobster. Excuse me. So I guess in the end, though, pain can be a good thing. A very good thing. I kind of got on this pain thing with Evie's passing. This is just kind of where my mind is right now. So I apologize if it's not the most upbeat. And that's not my metaphor. That's not my metaphor, guys. Please don't. I'm not going to say that's my words. I borrowed it from another Jewish scholar, and he was talking about the lobster metaphor of the uncomfortability, which is what prompts the lobster to shed its shell, which then prompts the lobster to grow. Without the pain of the impromptu to shed the shell, growth can't happen. Pain is good. But in society, we've been told pain is bad, so we dull the senses and we dull the pain to not feel. And when you remove feelings, this is what you're left with. Dulled down, senseless, non-feeling people. This is why I don't take pain meds. I would rather feel it. It's my body's way of letting me know that's not working. Here's something interesting, too, though, I was thinking about. Now, this is my own spin on the lobster thing. For instance, we tell people not to be in pain. Now, for instance, if I took pain meds to stop my shoulder from hurting, I would be able to do the activities that I used to enjoy, at least to an extent. I could probably go snowboarding again. I could probably maybe go bowling again. I could go jet skiing again. I could go do all the things I used to love enjoying doing. Baseball, sports, paintball, just all the stuff that I used to be able to do, I could do again if I took pain medicine. But what I would be doing to myself is telling my body to ignore the pain, and that's my body's way of saying, the pain is telling your body of how it needs to adapt to the situation. So for instance, when my body is in pain, it taught me to adapt to use, you risk more injury. You risk hurting yourself by ignoring the pain. Pain is your body's way of telling you something's not working right. And that's a good way to pay attention to it. What would you do if your car had a check engine light come on? Something's wrong with your car. You don't throw a pill down. Hello, Jaden Owen. Glad to have you. Glad to have you. You wouldn't throw a pill at your car. You'd fix it, right? Or the point is, though, is that if I pain pills dull. They dull and they tell you everything's okay when you can cause further harm to yourself inadvertently and unknowingly. And what happens when you cause more harm to yourself? Well, now you need a stronger pain pill to fight that pain. So while I learned that my arm hurts, there you go, exactly. I like it. Walk it off, Just downshift. You'll be all right. Drink oil. But I learned to adapt with my left hand. So much more stuff. Now my left arm has become very adaptive. Now there's been some things that I've had to work with. Like for instance, my back muscles took a real beating when my arm gets messed up. I don't have the same muscle connectivity and I don't have the same skeletal structure as you guys do anymore. Mine's completely different. In this area, doesn't look like yours in any way, shape, or form. Nothing looks like this in yours. My arm is mangled. But I learned to use my left hand for so much more to correct. Now, I still have problems with using my right, which inadvertently I'm going to, but I've learned that when the pain starts, I shift. And it tells me how I need to start moving in a different way to continue what I'm doing. So my body's feeding me the information. That's what pain is. It's information. And what did we talk about earlier? The gathering of information is what makes things to be able to progress yourself is to gather information. And if your brain is sending you information to tell you about yourself and you're blocking it, you're not gathering the information. I love how when we do these conversations, we can always wrap around to something else we talked about and how it comes full circle. I kind of like that. I kind of like that. Wow, we learned so much today, guys. I'm not going to lie. We learned so much. I'm just like happy speaking with Tom. Talking with Tom and how we were able to go over those numbers together, that made me feel good. Oh, very much so true. Very much so true. Absolutely. Absolutely. And they learned to adapt. Now, what would happen if we just kept feeding them pills all the time and we told them, don't worry, we'll do it for you? They would never learn, and then they would become dependent. You don't want someone doing things for you because then you become dependent constantly on them. It's nothing wrong to ask for help, but you don't want someone constantly doing everything for you because then, you lose your ability to do so. And I think that's where we're getting into the situation with kids today and the problems they're facing is because everything is instantaneous for them. Now, I'm sorry about that interruption. Oh, the Batcave is way better than pills. I'm still able to function. It doesn't stop the pain. It just lets me know that, I don't want the pain to stop. With what I do with the Batcave doesn't stop my pain. It mitigates it. It's still there, and I know it's there. It's just a little easier to not have to be constantly annoyed by it. It's a distraction that helps me, and that's what I want. The pain is still there. But with the PTSD, it does so much more for that. It calms me down. I generally focus more on one thing with that, and that keeps my mind from wandering. I already naturally have a wandering mind, if you guys haven't noticed. But add a wandering mind with some stress to it, and it can become bad. Born without arms? Wow. Wow, isn't that amazing? I've seen some people who can shoot because they've learned a new way to adapt and better muscle. When you have to learn to adapt a new part of your body to do something you want, you probably get better control out of it because it's not meant to do that. So the manipulation necessary to learn that control is probably gives you so much more dexterity with whatever task you're attempting to use. I wouldn't doubt, man. I wouldn't doubt it. My grandma was a crack shot too. We took my grandma to the range once, Grandma Dorothy, years ago when I was little, and boy, she was a crack shot. And she was Canadian, so she came from Canada where they learned to use guns back when they were younger, and she was a crack shot. Wonderful, man. And then I gave my grandma. Sip went up to go see my grandma with my uncle once, and they took my .45, and Grandma was outside plinking with the .45 all day on point. She was a good shot. Grandma loved her guns, but she never owned a gun. But she loved guns. My grandma was Canadian. She immigrated here from Canada. Canada is much more strict on guns. Much more strict on guns. Yeah, you can't really have guns in Canada. I think they can allow for maybe rifles or shotguns for hunting. But again, though, that comes back down to why the Canadian Army doesn't need as much budget for their military is because, again, they enjoy the comforts of the U.S. military's budget. For instance, if someone wanted to invade Canada and take Canada, their military, say like Russia wanted to invade and take Canada, the Canadian military would never be able to stand up to Canada. But because of the North Americans' policy, it requires that anybody that would be landing on the North American continent in a military form, it would be a threat. Would be considered a threat to the United States, and therefore our military would intervene. So a lot of people don't realize, too, that when they talk about like the spending, well, what's the defense budget of Switzerland? What's the defense budget of Germany? Look at the reason our defense budget is so high is because all of these people fall under our umbrella of the U.S. military's defense budget. It's nothing wrong. That's fine. We're all NATO. We're in this together. So I have no issue with that whatsoever. But when you say, look at the armed nation that protects us, why do they have so many guns? It's kind of an odd statement to ask. I think that if the U.S. military pulled back some of its bases, you would see defense budgets go up in other countries exponentially that already have a high tax rate. And when they talk about free healthcare, it's not free. It's paid for by their taxes, whether they use it or not. So it's not free. There's no such thing as free. Hey, you know what? No, we don't. It's a team. We're a team. And I think that's where we're getting these lines, is that people don't realize that with NATO, we're a team. Okay? And you're not going to pick on my boy. That's not going to go down. I'm going to come over and handle business if you try to mess with my friends. And that's how it is. We're friends. All of these countries are friends together in NATO. We should be protecting each other. It's not a question. But then when you start biting at the hand that's providing that protection and questioning why, it's like, whoa, guys, why? Why would you do this? We provide the protection. Is it what you want? No. Maybe it's not Are we perfect in America? Hell no. Hell no. America has so many problems that can be fixed. I was actually sitting here with Chris the other day, and I was talking about when I go run for my presidency in the United States, which, someday I'm going to try. I'm actually going to take a stab at it one year. When I meet the age requirements, I'm going to go fill out the forms. I'm going to go fill out the forms and see if I can get the signatures needed to get my name placed on the ballot. I think I need 200,000 signatures. So there's enough people in my town in Nashville that I should be able to gather. And I would say to the average person, why are you running for presidency? Because I'm a U.S. citizen and I should be able to, even if I just want to. Even if I'm a nobody, I should be able to run for president. Because when you think about it, everybody who's ever ran for president at one point in time or another was a nobody, or anybody who applied for office was a nobody. So why shouldn't a nobody? But I could fix things. And I'm going to tell you right this. During my inauguration, there's not going to be a giant parade because that's a waste of money. As soon as I'm done my inauguration, we got work to go do. And I'm going to be right in that Oval Office handling business right away. But the problem is, though, is it comes down to is that you have to be blocked in certain things like that. And you can get stuff done. You can make a country amazing. There's going to be things that are going to be, I know how to fix it. It's what I do. I'm a fixer. I'm not an inventor and I'm not a creator. I'm a fixer. I fix things. I like to fix things. I can look at something that's been made and I can tell you how to make it better, but I couldn't invent it. Okay? So, but that's where I can realize myself, my shortcomings is that I can't invent things. It's just not, I don't create. I can't see. But when I can see something in front of me, then I can look at it and realize what's better. I did this actually for the Army. I removed, there's a way that if you can come up with something better, a better design or something like that, write your information in, send it in, and they'll look at it and review it. And I did that for a generator, and I got a letter back saying, hey, we've reviewed this, and we may implement these changes on this specific piece of equipment since you recommended that this is better this way. And I don't know if it ever got implemented or not. Now, I know my dad got a letter from the military because he showed a way to invent a field tool for adjusting voltage regulators on deuce and a halves while in the field and not having to do anything. You know what? I wouldn't say we're the strongest. I wouldn't say we don't have the strongest military. What we have is a volunteer military of people who want to be there. This is why I don't think that mandatory service is right in the United States, because you would have a bunch of people who don't want to be there, and then what you have is subpar soldiers, and that doesn't do any good to anybody. And what you've done is you've wasted time, money, energy, and resources on someone that's only willing to put half their heart into it anyway. This is what happened in, I guess we have to come back to Florida, is that when someone's just out for something because they're told to, and a paycheck is their thing, they won't rush in and stop violence when it's happening. You need someone who wants to be there. I wanted to be in the military. I volunteered to be in the military, and I specifically knew what I was putting myself into, and I knew the risk that I was taking, and I was comfortable with that. I'm comfortable rushing somebody with a gun. Doesn't bother me one bit. Pain doesn't really annoy me. Again, not scared of death either, though. And there's nothing wrong if you are saying, hey man, I don't want to die. I don't want this. I don't want that. China is very powerful, but you have to remember they're under a communist regime. So while they have a strong military, I guarantee half of them to maybe a quarter of them would break at the opportunity because they really don't want to be there. And America enjoys also the technological advances that keep us powerful. The ingenuity. Oh, the ingenuity that comes out. Did you guys see me hit her in the head with that? The ingenuity that comes out.
You seen him throw it at me without me looking. But.
Oh yeah, you did. Well, I'll play some more here in a little bit. And like I said, Evie's gonna be out of town soon, so I'm gonna have lots of free time to just kind of sit and muddle to myself. Just sit and roll my thumbs. So we'll play some more Fortnite. We'll be doing lots of more of that. But I think when we just get down to it, though, people, it's America does, I think, more good than harm. And we had the right intentions. Sometimes the leadership gets messed up, and that's where I think, though, that imagine this, though, if the American government wanted to become tyrannical and apply that tyrannicalness to the rest of the world, but the American people said, we're not going to allow you to do that, and the government said, you can't do anything about it. Well, it'd be a really good thing then that the American people had guns to stop a tyrannical government that could overstretch its reach to the world. I think that's where Hitler was kind of getting his thing going. Was first he disarmed the population so that the only people who had weapons that could fight back were his people, and then he started exerting his control around the world. And what did we do to stop a man who had lots of guns? Well, we sent more men with guns, and those good men with guns stopped bad men with guns, and that's always going to be how it happens. How do you stop a hatchet? Another hatchet. If you guys aren't familiar with If you guys aren't familiar with the TV show, which is back today for its new season, Another Period, which is hilarious. And a great episode there was a man and he had a hatchet and he wanted to go assassinate somebody. So he took out his hatchet and he threw it at her. Well, it just so happened that this one girl who was in the room, she was trained with hatchets. So she pulled her hatchet out and she threw it and deflected the hatchet. And basically what it came down to, she said that if a bad person with a hatchet uses it, you need a good person with a hatchet to stop it. Now, the comedy aspect they threw into it was the hatchet was deflected and nailed a little boy and he died. And I guess it came down to, they said, you know why he died? Because he didn't have a hatchet. It's not a vicious cycle, though. It's not a vicious cycle. It's actually a cycle of more good is done than there is bad. So it's overpowering. Overall violence in the United States has gone down. Overall crime in the United States has gone down. Overall, in general. So I believe, think about the old Wild West. Everybody had guns, and somehow a lot of people survived. Everybody had guns. Guns aren't the problem. I could cause more damage with. I think there was more people that could be harmed with chemical weapons than you could ever do with a conventional firearm. No. Pat Mustard is one of our very good friends. He's just stating an opinion, and that's okay. It kind of is a vicious cycle. But if we remove the good guys from the guns of that cycle, then all we're left is bad people with guns, and that's a slippery slope. It lasted about 10 years in its entirety? I wouldn't say so. The Wild Wild West is still going on crazy out there. It's still wild out in parts of Colorado, and you get into the Midwest and the Rockies, it's still very wild out there. Alaska, very, very wild.
Butter.
We're going straight to the Wild Wild West.
I said no.
10 years? I don't know. 10 to maybe 20 years of the Wild West went on.
Sorry, I have to move your blanket.
Guys, Tyler was just asking. He's a very nice kid, and he's very... You just wanted to know. It's no big deal.
That's okay.
No big deal.
Yeah, you can scratch yourself. You just can't.
But it's a part of life. It's a part of here. It's in our culture. Guns have been part of the American culture since the beginning. And remember how we say it's wrong to strip culture from other cultures? We wouldn't want to go to an island of inhabitants and see, this happened in the past, and now we recognize it as an atrocity when we strip culture away from people. And if this is part of our culture, trying to strip it away is you're stripping away identity of people. Guns are what made America what it was. If it wasn't for guns, there would be no America. There wouldn't be. It was a tyrannical government that was fought off by peasants with guns. And they were able to arm themselves and take into account their own actions. And then they put into place. It's interesting, too, someone was talking about in our amendments, the First Amendment is freedom of speech. Right after that is guns. So it's the right to speak and then the right to defend yourself for speaking. It's like they almost were like, it's 1 and 2. The top 2 on the board. That was the first thing they said. First off, you should be able to say whatever you want. Because when you were in the presence of the king, you couldn't. So the first thing people were probably like is, remember when the king was like, you will shut your mouth and do as you're told. Yes, my lord. You really think the people in their head were thinking, yes, my lord? No, they were like, I want to say, fuck you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go that route like that, but that's exactly what it was. And that's what America did to King George, is we threw up a big... So, the next thing they said was, right after that is, you should be able to say whatever you want. And then right after that is that if 2 people more, somebody didn't like what you said, they could stop you physically. But they came up with a tool that would say, no, you're going to be equal. And it comes back to the movie Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, when he says... 1 armed man defending his home is stronger than 10 knights. And what it is, and he says, the Crusades taught me that. And what the military taught me is that 1 armed person defending their rights is stronger than any government coming after them to take those. Military taught me that. So, if you think about the movie Robin Hood, he was actually then a veteran of war who came back to his hometown to see things being overruled by a tyrannical government, and he overthrew them. And what did he do? He used terroristic tactics, and he used weapons to overthrow a tyrannical government. That's the story of Robin Hood. So those who can relate to it, wasn't he the archer, the Prince of Thieves? Although it's not speculated that Robin Hood was a true story, no one knows. It seems speculated that it could have been just a myth. The point is, though, is that it was a veteran who came back from war who realized the injustices that were going on throughout the land and did something about it. Well, of course they are. There's no way to stop guerrilla warfare. This is why in Vietnam we had to call a stalemate. There's no way to do it. You can't stop a guerrilla warfare, an insurgent of people who are willing to blend in. There's no way to. The only way to have stopped it, and when people say America's evil, the easiest way to have won the Iraq-Afghanistan wars would have just been to kill everybody, because then you would have gotten the terrorists. But we have to play by rules, and we mitigate, and we try to avoid unnecessary casualties, regardless of what CNN says. There was so much going on that we had to do. You'd be surprised the rules of war that we were required to follow. It was very scrutinous, very, very scrutinous. Hello there, Matt. Glad to have you guys. Absolutely. And the problem I think with that, I think at least in my opinion, is the UK should dissolve the royal family. It's unnecessary to have them anymore. It provides nothing. It does nothing. It only stands as a reminder that these people think their blood is somehow special and better than yours. And in some way they deserve this because of that, which if that's what the British people want, it's up to you guys. But there should be no kings and queens anymore. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Absolutely. No more, no less. The only difference is that if there's a line crossed so much so that the people of America don't feel that that is correct anymore, we have the absolute means in our hands to stop it. Or at least cause a big enough problem that it would have to be changed. A guerrilla warfare, if you will. Right, I'm sorry, but the whole premise was the based idea that God put these people there and that somehow they were sanctioned and that there's a bloodline that makes them more noble. That's retarded. It doesn't exist. If anything, I would say the royal family probably has some of the most tainted blood in the world through inbreeding. Please don't forget that the current prince and his wife are, I guess, king, though, now?
Prince? No, they're not king.
Who is it?
Prince William and Kate Middleton?
Okay, they're cousins, okay? So he married his cousin. They tried to remove the history of the link between the two, but you can still look it up and find the link between the two families that show that they're cousins. So they're still inbreeding, and, whatever. They've got cute kids, and they're nice people, and there's nothing wrong with them. It's just unnecessary. There's nothing special about their blood. There's nothing special. They're not special people, and they deserve no special treatment in the 21st century. It has a single point to put pressure on, but then you also have a monarchy. The problem is, though, is that you believe that should be passed down, that position should be inherited, which is not the case. For instance, just because one person is good as a job doesn't mean the son is going to be just as good. So, while I understand, what does it say? Yeah, I agree. The English, I agree. As a English, Scottish, Irish, and Viking-blooded man, absolutely. Actually, it does. It's actually very worrying because inbreeding, I believe as they say, for every generation of inbreeding, you generally lose anywhere from 5 to 10 IQ points, roughly. And they are German. Yeah, they are. They changed the name. Windsor is not their name. They changed the name to the family Windsor because their original name sounded too German. And nobody thought that in World War II, a German family would be very acceptable. So the name was changed to Windsor to meet the public mind. So you've got inbreeding, which we know causes. It's just a whole thing. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. It makes no way sense to me. And how did these people become nobles? And I think the movie, if we look at the movie's Knight's Tale, tells us very well. How did the nobles become noble? They took their nobility at the tip of a sword. That means they killed people to say, I'm in charge here now. So they bullied and then established a family reign to continue that bullying, and people just said, okay, and I guarantee what it was is the peasants didn't have swords. Swords weren't readily available. It was all about arms. Whoever could have the most arms could be in charge. So a disarmed population who didn't have access to swords and stuff like that, well, I'm not trying to be a dick or anything, but they are inbred. They're all inbred, every one of them. It's all just keeping it in the family. They've been doing that for hundreds of years. When you think about, like, I was watching the TV show The Tudors, and they're like, okay, well, this king is going to marry this person, right? To bring these two households together for this time, right? But if you backed it up 50 years ago, the family had already been brought together by another marriage that made them. And then this family married. There was we had Spain, England, Cantalone, you had France, you had some of the Papal States. So let's just, I'm not sure of all the total kingdoms, but we'll say 10. roughly about 10 kings and queens that were at the time. Maybe more, maybe less. I'm not right on the point. 10 or 15, though, families that are constantly marrying in and out of each other. Off with my head. Absolutely. Now, isn't it great, though, that while jokingly Matt Willis would say, traitor, off with his head, should someone actually not like the words I said and attempted to follow through with Matt's off with my head, I would have a weapon here to defend myself with my even though through my words may have incited it. So you see how that works full circle. Yes, if 4 of you decided to come against me because you didn't like that I said that the monarch is completely unnecessary, the 4 of you could overpower me and exert your will against me. But you wouldn't be able to because I could at least rightly defend myself in a reasonable manner. It's that full circle again. Now I know, of course, Matt Willis didn't mean that. He was joking, and off with his head. I'd like to keep my head. But that's the point. Yep, see, nothing's changed. See, though, here's where things think about this. I want you guys to think about this, though. Here's how I came up with it, and this is an interesting point. And I may be wrong. What did you say? On my way with the pitchfork. There you go. Get a mob together. So think about this. Let's say this. Rome used to rule the world, right? The Roman Empire was everywhere, and it collapsed. Do you think that these Roman leaders that survived this just said, well, that was a good run, guys. I guess that's that. No. What they did was they adopted a religious movement that was taking hold across it, and they started the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and they were able to then once again instate regular people to become princes again, but now with the authority of God on their side, and they were able to then bend the will of kings and queens who thoroughly believed in God, and they were able to manipulate things like that. Now, when kings, queens, and all that dissolved, and lords of the land, and knights and dukes, you think all those people just went away and said, well, that was a good run, guys. It's all over. No, they just changed the names of them. And that's where English gets really, really, you got to be careful with your English because they change so many things on people. If I called a snake a roll of toilet paper, it's still just as deadly. But now people may not feel as threatening when you say, hey, there's a roll of toilet paper over there. Nobody would feel threatening. Nobody would feel threatening. But it's a snake. It's still a snake. It's just as deadly. So what we changed the names of kings, queens, monarchs, we changed them to judges, lawyers, because back in the day, let's say you were a peasant and something came up into the problem. You would go to the Lord of the Land. Lord of the Land, I'm having this dispute. The Lord of the Land, if you paid him enough, because that's a lawyer, would take your issue up to the king. And he would petition the king on behalf of you. Hey, this is a peasant. He's a good guy. I know him. He does a thing. I would really appreciate if you did this for him. Now, the king, knowing who this guy is, he's going to kick a little money to him, and the king's going to make a decision for the peasant. So nothing's changed. It's just a lawyer speaking to a judge. Judges became rulers of the land, and knights, dukes, and lords of the land became our lawyers. So they just changed names, but you still pay them the same kind of things you want. If you want something petitioned to the king, you must speak to the Lord of the Land on behalf of you, and he will petition the king for you. It's all changing language. It's just how we change the verbiage of things, the language of things. Again, it comes back to an assault rifle. Assault is a verb. You can't assault a rifle. It has nothing to be assaulted. You can damage it, you can destroy it, you can break it, you can maintain it, but you can't assault it. You can assault a person, but I can assault a person with anything. But the names changed. The names changed, and when we get confused on the English of things, for instance, in our Constitution it says a well-regulated militia, comma, the people the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. What people don't realize is that comma. That means there's this distinction between two parts. The militia, in order to form a well-maintained and regulated militia, comma, the people shall have the right to bear arms and not be infringed. So what it's saying is the militia shall have the right to have firearms. And who is the militia? Well, we all are the militia. So we all have the right to that. And though if you're not part of the militia, which usually each city had its organized people who were the militia, the men would come to town with their guns. At one point, it was against the law not to own a gun in the United States. But the men of the militia would come together, not saying, though, that the people who were still sitting at home while the militia goes off to do their thing still can't have guns to protect themselves. That's where it comes in, that little comma. But people have lost that little comma. I nearly choked on a toilet roll as a kid. It nearly got stuck up my nose, and Dad told me, oh boy, wow. So toilet rolls can be deadly. But the point is, though, is that little comma means and. So it's not this, then let's define what this is, which would be parentheses, which it's not. And it's very awesome that they said we can say what we want, and then we'll show you how to defend yourself with it. That's the first two things right off the bat. Say what you want, defend yourself from it, from your words. Defend yourself. So basically, though, that comma, that little nick, it says militia and the people, and the people. So let's take out that comma and put in the correct wording. So when it says the rights, a well-regulated militia and the people shall have the right to bear arms and not be infringed upon. So there's two groups of people that it's mentioning, a militia and everybody else. So when people say, oh, well, that's for a well-regulated militia. Well, where do you think a well-regulated militia comes from? And they say, oh, well, that's our standing army. No, because the military at the time, the United States at the time had a standing army. Had the Continental Standing Army through George Washington's Standing Army. Now, Washington also, after the war was over, had to go fight militias, which a lot of people don't realize is that some of these people wanted to do their own thing afterward, and they formed their own militia. Now, George Washington didn't say to them, well, I guess these militias are causing me a huge problem. I guess if I just changed it so that they can't have guns, I could mop this problem up easily. But he didn't, and he did that for the express purpose of, because he knew that if I do this, then it's possible that later it could turn into this, which is what we just got done fighting, and I don't want that, so I can't do it. So it's not like they didn't think about that. And then when some people say, oh, well, they didn't have that type of weaponry in mind when the Second Amendment was written, and that's not true. Go look up advanced weaponry of the 1700s. There were many of weapons that were very fast-firing. I'm sorry, but what is a militia? A militia. A militia, I apologize. A militia. Here, let me spell it out for you so you can get the correct spelling.
M-I-L-I-T.
I know how to spell it. I have to get onto my thing to do it. A militia, M-I-L-I-T-A. A militia is a group of people that come together in a community. For instance, let's say this, the mob, pitchfork mob. Pitchfork mob. When a town came together and said, hey, we don't like this, we're going to defend against it. That's a militia. Or so like, for instance, let's give a hypothetical scenario. The United States of America, Washington, D.C., all our leaders are killed. Okay, so now I'm like, well, who's gonna regulate things around here? What we could do is me as my neighbors could all come together with our weapons and say, look, we're gonna police ourselves in this little area, and we'll make sure nobody causes any problems in this area. We'll police it ourselves. We'll militia the area. And that's what would happen. So, like, in the event of somebody ever invading the United States, the whole point of there being guns was that Japan in World War II wanted to invade mainland United States, but they thought this would be a bad idea because I forget the name of the gentleman who said it. He said there would be a gun in every bush, which he means that if you tried to take the United States, you would be fighting not only their military, their government, but their people. So what happens is now you've got a population of a standing militia, which means that the militia, like for instance, during the Revolutionary War, the militia aided the Continental Army, but they did not fall under the regulations of. They are basically just free men who aren't subjecting themselves to the socialism of the regular army, which we already discussed. So there are people who want to still fight and have the right to defend themselves, and you don't need the government to tell you you can do so to do that. So that's what a militia is. It's just a group of civilians getting together to protect themselves for a common good. So that's how a militia was formed. And if we look back even into World War II, it was called something else. If you go to Belarus, they were called partisans. So they formed, it was just people, regular people who didn't want to be taken under Nazi control, and they fled to the woods, and they formed their own little communities, and they knew the military. The military can't always protect you. That's the point, is that you can't have soldiers with civilians and police with civilians at all times, because they just can't do it. There's too many. So what they did was they banded together, got some arms, and they defended themselves as a militia. So this happened in Belarus no more than 70 years ago. And one of the most famous people that came out of it was, I think, Alexis Belatov was his name, I believe it was. It happened in Turkey. See, so when people talk about, oh, well, these things haven't happened, it's been years, and no, this stuff still happens. It's just Americans, what's happening in America is they're ignorant to what's going on outside of the United States. They don't realize that how lucky we are in this country, that some of our poorest live better than some of the average in the rest of the world. Now, I don't necessarily mean all the parts of the world, but there are people in America. There is not a real poor family living in a welfare house that doesn't have a TV. Doesn't have a big screen TV. Okay, I've been to countries, I've been to northern Afghanistan where they still are working with mud huts, okay? And people are complaining, oh, our poor live better than some of the middle working class of other countries, and they don't understand that. We've had too much comfortability. We've dulled our senses enough where there's no more growth. And now with the new president, things are getting uncomfortable. And people don't like the pain because they've spent so many years dulled down to pain that they're not used to it. It's not familiar. It's alienating. And that's what's going on is we have an uncomfortability, which is going to lead to our shedding our shell, and growth is going to happen. But do remember, when you shed that shell for growth, you lose some of your personal safety. But sometimes that's up to you. That's what the claws are there for. You don't tell a lobster to depend on the shark to eat the fish that's going to attack it. You wouldn't take the claws from the lobster, right? You wouldn't say, look, you could very well harm another lobster with these claws, which they do. But we don't take the claws away from the lobsters, and we tell them that the sharks will eat, or this stingray will protect you from this. I think it's interesting when you talk to people, and Americans like to claim, oh, there's a police brutality in America, but we don't want the citizens to have guns. We want the police to have guns and the government to have the guns. It's like, didn't you just say there's a police brutality problem? So you want to take the guns out of the hands of the people who could defend themselves against brutality, but you also at the same turn want only the people that can enforce brutality to have the... Absolutely. I think also everybody should have the right to a sword. Swords are great. You can do a lot of damage with a sword. And someone said it was only meant for muskets. Dude, I'm going to tell you right now, if I only used 1700 era weaponry to defend my home, there'd be a lot more damage going on. I would never want to attempt to shoot a musket accurately at someone at more than 25 feet. And even then, I'm not sure I'm going to hit them. What'd you say there, Tom? Okay. I almost don't watch TV, only in the morning before I go to work. Well, very good. And Peter Winthrop, I agree with you. But again, it's not, I didn't go out with a gun with the intent of, oh boy, now I'm ready. I went out, I was like, good, I'm prepared. I'm not ready, I'm prepared. It's the same reason why people stock up during a storm of bottled water, is you want to be prepared in case something happens. Why did people buy shit tons of canned food during Y2K? It's not because they were like, oh boy, Y2K is coming. They were like, should it happen, I'm ready. Which I think was ignorant, because Y2K is kind of a bad example. It was the most retarded thing in the world. The program was changed so easily. All they had to do was update most computers to go from a 2-digit year to a 4-digit year, and it was that. Oh, Gary, again. Gary.
What?
He sent us another £5. Thank you, guys. You didn't have to do that. I'm going to take that money then when I get it. I'll take it out of my wallet now, and I'm going to give it to Evie to send her on her trip. So she can have some extra money. So I'll just take that away from now, and I'll get that later on. That's fine. We'll donate that to her.
Truly appreciate it.
So thank you, guys. You didn't have to do that, Gary. You did 2 yesterday. You do too much. Too much. Too much for me, Gary. Evie's going to go about, 6 hours drive?
It's about, I think, an 8-hour drive.
8-hour drive with the time change, so it's a 7-hour drive. So it's not too bad. She's very familiar with the route. She's made the trip before by herself. I send Evie with a pistol when she leaves, because we don't want anything to happen, but should it, she'll have the means to defend herself along the road, especially a single woman traveling. It's just smarter. And she's also very proficient on it. She's also very proficient with it. You can nail a bullseye at 25 meters all day. So I know she's capable.
I had every guy in that place looking
Now,
at me.
before she leaves, too, I'll take the pistol, and I'm going to go ahead and clean it real quick for her. And I'm going to oil it so it's nice and clean. And she's going to put it somewhere safe while she's driving. And no one's going to have to know that it's there. And she doesn't need to pull it out. And it's not going to bother anybody. But should a situation arrive, I know my baby will be safe. I know she may not be completely safe, but I'll at least give her a fighting chance, which is better than nothing. I'd rather have a fighting chance than nothing. Tom says, here in the Netherlands, you have to drive. You drive from north to south in like 3 hours. Well, that's nice and convenient. You know, everybody's only 3 hours away. But then that means that everybody's always, hey, dude, you're never that far. You can always come help. So, especially if you're the guy who owns a truck. If you buy a truck, that's like a calling card to people to say to them, hey, you want to help me move this Saturday? So there you go. Guys, I can't believe we zoomed through almost 2 hours. You do everything by train? I myself, Tom, have never been on a train. Never. I've never been on a train. No, I've been on a subway. I guess that's a train, right? But it's not the same as a train because it's a subway. That's why it has the name subway, because it's sub, which underground, a subway. It actually stands for subterranean transportation, subterranean way. So technically, no, I've never been on a train. I've been on a subway. So I distinct the two as differences. While similar, they're not the same. Oh, well, that's nice. You go every couple weeks to see your girlfriend on a train. Does she ever come see you? I would imagine it's much cheaper. No, David, just to answer your question, you have to put your card information in, and it'll apply it to your card information. Please don't donate if you don't have it. Don't give until it hurts. I would never ask that. Give if it feels right, but don't feel like you guys ever have to. What I miss? I had to go. Oh, not my much. Oh, well, that's nice. She comes to see you one weekend, then you go see her. Well, that's a very nice back and forth you guys have, and good. I'm glad you have yourself a nice, healthy relationship. And then I guess throughout the week, you don't have to worry about, you can hang out with us when you're feeling lonely. So that's nice. That's pretty smooth setup you got going on there. Good for you, Tom. Good for you. And that's nice that you were able to find somebody that, even though at a distance, it hasn't affected you guys' work and job and relationship. That's really nice that distance isn't, but I guess like no more than like 2 hours, an hour on a train isn't that bad. That's nice though. That's really good. That's really good. Who doesn't love it? We're going to go over the 2 hour mark for sure, guys. I don't know how long, but we're going to go over. You go on Skype. Okay, very good. Yeah, when I was in the military, Skype was like invaluable. Right, and I think anxiety without the proper tools is just paranoia. Right? 2 hours. Not bad. Not bad at all. Time is not an issue because time doesn't exist, Tom. There's no such thing as time. Now, here's an interesting fun fact for you guys, though. Space-time. Let's talk about space-time a little bit. Time travel. I can send you into the future whenever you want. Just let me know, and I'll be happy to send you to the future. I know how to do it. It's not difficult at all. It may be a little time-consuming. Light years? I could probably send you into the future. Oh, I don't know. Maybe 5-10 years. It shouldn't be difficult to do. I know the process to do it. Sending you to the past is going to be a little harder, but I can send you to the future. That's easy. All right, get a piece of paper out. And space-time doesn't exist, in my opinion. No. What you have to realize is that space-time does exist because we are in space and we observe that space through time. That is space-time. Time itself doesn't exist. But for instance, let me explain to you how space-time works. If I was to tell you, Bub, let's meet up. Let's meet up. I want to meet you. What's the first thing you're going to say to me, Bub? If we wanted to meet up with each other, like frigate hopping. Well, I'll explain to you how we're going to send you in the future in just a second, but I want to explain I want to get to Bub's point real quick. If I was to say to you, I want to meet up with you, Bub, where in space? No, not where in space. You would first say, where in space would you like to meet? We were going to meet in a physical space, somewhere in space. The next question you would say to me was, okay, well, what time? So if two objects are to come together in space, you need two things. You need a place and a time. So therefore, when we talk about anything like that, it's space-time. But the way we can, and I can prove to you that space-time does exist right here. Here's how I'm going to send you into the future. And then if you're like, oh, well, that's kind of far off, I'll give you guys an experiment you can do here on Earth, and you can observe space-time for yourself. So here's how we do. Absolutely, and that's how we get space-time. So space-time is, without a doubt, it exists. The fabric of space is, without a doubt, this is what gives us gravity. It's the warping of space-time, which is a continual fall. Gravity is not real, it's a constant falling. Time has no direction, but space does. Well, time does have distance and directions in a four-dimensional thing because it goes out in all directions. But for instance, so here's how we warp space-time. You want to go to the future time? Here's how I'm going to send you. Time has no fabric, but space does, and since they're one and the same, space-time fabric. Space fabric. If you want to remove time from it, that's fine. We can. But here's how I'm going to send you in the future. All we have to do is find a black hole. Okay? Getting you there might be a little difficult. I didn't say getting there would be easy. I said sending you to the future would be easy. And all you have to do is find the right angle necessary where that you can ride the black hole in orbit and still maintain enough speed for breakaway as you're following the loop, which is the warping and no, they've already proven black holes do exist. That's without a doubt. That was proven back in the 90s. It was a theoretical hypothesis. Hypothesis, meaning that they believed there was, and now they've been able to theoretically touch it. They've proven there's black holes. It's already been seen. We can see it through gravitational lensing. There's a massive black hole at the center of our universe, of our galaxy. It's been proven. I don't think that's a movie at all. That's not a movie. That's just fact, though. You can spin yourself if you can get the right angle. You might be thinking the movie. What was that movie? I forget. It was one with Matthew McConaughey, and he landed on a planet and that was close to a black hole, and it changed the amount of time. But that does happen. Gravitational lensing is exactly. It's the bending of light. It bends light. Gravitational lensing bends light. And what that bend is it's just like here. Let's take a piece of paper. Oh, sorry. Grab a piece of paper. Oh, this will work even better. And I'll show you how gravitational lensing works. This is space-time. It's flat. And when we put something like gravity, if you put an object in the middle of your paper, it creates a divot. Okay? Interstellar. Thank you. So this is gravity. This is how gravity is formed. We've put a massive object in the center of space-time, so it's bent it. Now, light can't pass through that solid object. So what happens is, though, is because of gravity, when light's coming, it rolls. It rolls around it, and we can see past the object. What was that? It says, our own sun doesn't bend light other than via refraction. Actually, we can look past the sun, and we do that through gravitational lensing so that we can view what's behind the sun, and they actually do that. So it does bend light. It does bend light. It doesn't bend its outward light of its own, but it does bend light on incoming. It does. It does. Well, of course it makes no shadow. This is how we can see things on the backside of the sun. You could never stare directly at it. You would never be able to get a picture. They have to use special cameras to do it. But our sun, it might also not be massive enough to cause any kind of serious warping, but it does warp space-time, and it does bend light. It may not be into an effect of where we're able to view it. And that's okay, Jay. That's okay, bub. We can disagree on space-time. But so what we did, though, is this. And I'm gonna tell you guys how here on Earth you can do your own experiment to see space-time being warped. So we talked about a massive black hole. You ride it at a certain angle. It's going to basically slow down time as you approach the speed of light. Because you're riding on such a strong pull of gravity, you're going to slow time down personally. When you get done making the full loop around the black hole, you will now be in the future, and everybody else will have aged in a different time. Therefore, you're on. Now, how do we do this in an observable technique to watch the warping of space-time done through mass? And the simplest way is to do this. I heard dark matter's made out of nibbler poop. Well, of course it is, and it powers our engines.
That's from Futurama.
It is. Now, here's how you can go test this theory that I don't want you to believe it for yourself. You don't have to believe me, but I can prove to you space-time can be warped, and you can do it here on Earth. All you have to do is go to Egypt, and you're going to go up to the Great Pyramid of Giza, and you're going to lean against it. That's all you have to do. When you look out, when you look out at others moving, you will notice that there is something's not right. The time will look different. The way people move will look different. It'll almost look a little slower. Light has been said that up against the pyramid, people have always said it looks weird. And the experiment they did is they were able to do an experiment. And because the mass of the pyramid is so great, it literally warps the space-time just slightly. Just slightly. But because of the speed of light is the only reason our human eye works correctly, that we're able to view in real time because of that speed. But because of the mass of the Great Pyramid, that dip is just enough to affect the speed of the light that your eye notices the difference. If the speed of light wasn't where the speed of light is, you wouldn't be able to do anything. No, I'm dead serious. I would never pull your leg on this. Because if it's that simple, why don't we do it? Because of the fuel cost it takes to get to the nearest black hole. And then what's the purpose? So yes, if you go lean up against the Great Pyramid of Giza, the mass of the pyramid is so great in such a small area that it's able to slightly warp space in its own footprint, enough so that while it's not super detectable, it is visibly and noticeably detectable that light has slowed down ever so much, because when light's traveling on a straight line and then you bend it, the light must travel a greater distance to get to your eye, and in that turn, you're slowing it down. Exactly. That's why it's not. I didn't say I could get you there. I said I could get you in the future easily, which all you have to do is kind of just ride the wave. You really wouldn't have to do anything. And now the hard part would be getting there to send you into the future. So I know how to do it. I just don't have the means to do it. So it would take lifetimes just to be able to send someone in the future. And by the time they got there, you're already in the future. Yes, absolutely. Anything, you got to remember the mass of the Great Pyramid is ridiculous. It's freaking ridiculous. Some of those stones that are used to make the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now, don't mistake these for the small pyramids that are nearby, those smaller pyramids, the Great Pyramids in Giza. You can lean up against the Great Pyramid and you will be able to physically observe the warping of space. No. A mall, not big enough because the mass is spread out. It's so spread out. The mass has been evenly distributed. Remember, with a pyramid, a triangle is the strongest shape in nature, right? So that it distributes weight evenly on all sides. So with a mole, it's not evenly distributed mass. And there's a difference between weight and mass. And the reason, if someone says they don't agree with that, well, here on Earth, my weight is 220 pounds, and I take up this much volume of space. Now, when I go into space, my weight will be less, but my volume of mass will still be the same. It doesn't warp the light of the circling stars. Well, which direction of the light are you observing? Because warping of space would only be observable for the warping in the direction of the viewer. So, for instance, if there's a ball of light radiating a light out in this direction, only the light heading this direction towards the black hole would be able to be warped. The rest of it would be heading towards the viewer, the position of the viewer, and you wouldn't see that light being warped. It also takes, I believe, a certain level of density for a gravitational lens to happen. That's why we don't. So, I mean, that's fine, and we're good to disagree, Bob. In no way, shape, or form would I ever discredit you. You may have some more information that I'm not relaying correctly, or maybe I've got a hole in my, and you may know more. You may be an astrophysicist for all I know, and I could be just speaking out of my butt. But I'm just going off what I know, and I do know that gravitational lensing is a thing. It's used to observe, and it's done by a object of heavy mass warping space-time. That's what it is. Gravity is the warping of space-time. That's what gravity is. Gravity isn't really a real thing. We're falling. We're always falling towards the point of mass. And when the Earth pushes on space-time, we fall into the Earth towards the center of its mass, like the bottom. We see stars going behind the center of the galaxy. Those lights not good. How do you think we see those? How do you think we see those? Because light can't escape a black hole, so it has to warp around it. That's how we can see it. So, for instance, if this is your black hole, right? Okay, the light comes into it, gets captured. Light can't escape a black hole. Now, some light is coming at that angle we spoke about that's able to go around it and continue. That's the light we are observing. Not all light can be bent. It has to be at the right angle and the right distance and the right trajectory. All these things have to be in play for you to be able to see that light. Some light is getting absorbed and is falling into the black hole, never to be again. And remember, we can think of light, when we observe light, it's a wave, and when we don't observe light, it's a particle. Or excuse me, when we observe light, it's a particle. When we don't observe light, it's a wave. So light is something physical. How do I find a black hole? Our center of our Milky Way has one. You could probably go look up known black holes, but they've already proven black holes. It's been proven. I'm going to say this. I'm going to go with Bub on this one. No, because it's a theory. It's a theory. But here's the difference in wording where we get back to the English language, where everyone says, well, that's just a theory. That's just a theory. But they don't know what the meaning of a theory is. Okay? So you're saying what makes no sense is that we are spinning at 65 million miles an hour. Why aren't we being spun off into space? Because your fall, gravity's pull is stronger than that, and you're you also are moving at 65 million miles per hour. I would love to. If you have a link that you would like to send of gravitational of non, I can also happily find you a link, and I'll send you a link of gravitational lensing being observed. Please, by all means, send a link. I'm always willing to learn. Always willing to learn. You found a black hole and married her. Oh, that's funny. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, a fly flying in your car, if you were traveling in a forward direction and we were driving a car and there was a fly at the back of the car and it flew forward, it would actually be flying at maybe 65.1 miles per hour. When you're in your car, your physical body is also moving 65 miles per hour. That's why when you get into a car accident, you need to be strapped into a seatbelt, because it's not the stop that kills you. It's not the fall that kills you. It's the sudden stop. So it's not the impact that kills you. It's your body is continuing to move. Your steering wheel has come to an abrupt stop. Zero. Boom, I hit another car. Your body is still continuing at 65 miles an hour. That's where a seatbelt employs and an airbag employs to try to slow down the cushion of the stop. But if you were to if the Earth was to stop spinning, just the Earth to stop spinning, which is a documentary you're more than capable of checking out yourself. If the Earth was to stop spinning right now, everybody would go flying, because we're still moving at that speed and we are not attached to the ground. So yes, when you are driving in your car, you too are moving at that speed. When we are traveling and the Earth is spinning and you're going, and the people are like, oh, 65 mil, why aren't we being flung off? Because you two are being gravitationally locked and we're spinning together. We're spinning together at the same speed. That's why it doesn't observe. You don't see any different observation. It's all falling. Everything is falling. It's falling towards the center. It's kind of like when you go to the store and you see those machines where you drop the penny in and it spins around in a circle. Okay, that's the same principle. It's falling. It's not spinning. It's falling. But it's falling at an arc and an angle that keeps it going, which is always going in and out. It's similar to that. But let me get back to the theory thing where we got back to it. I think that the people have misplaced in the word, the Earth is flat. Sure. When you have the word theory, a theory and a hypothesis, and I think we've lost the word hypothesis in our English language so much. So for instance, when I talk about my wild ideas and everything, these are all hypotheses of mine. Some of them are true, some of them are not. Maybe some I believe, maybe some I don't. They're just hypotheses. They're ideas that are untested. But
neither proven or disproven.
There's no evidence to support my idea. That's what a hypothesis is. No evidence to support my idea. What a theory, though, is, and here's where language gets mixed up. Some people, oh, it's just a theory. It's just a theory. Is that we can't prove anything, okay? There's no proving anything, okay? I can't prove how the universe was created because why? I was not there, okay? I was never there. But I can do, what I can do is I can come up with a testable, workable model, and I can run that model over and over and over and over again to get data, which we talked about gathering data. And from that data, we can see a working, hey, this seems to work. I believe they did this with a theory where they made hypothetical universes and they ran it for like a year. And it made something like 10 million universes were created in this program. And out of it, they found that consistently, this is the way that the universe worked. And when that happened, what they were able to see was consistently, this is what formed working universes in this model. We take that and we apply it to what we see in our universe. Okay, these line up. It then is theorized that this is what the two is based on. So we have physical data that backs up our hypothesis to then create a theory. You need theory, you need hypothesis, plus data to create theory. You can't just say, well, I think this, so therefore it's a theory. Well, thank you so much. We can't prove we've been to space and the moon. Well, Here's my idea on the moon landing, and I'm going to tell you guys what I think about the moon landing, okay? We went to the moon, okay? But we didn't televise it, okay? They got there, or they realized the undertaking it was going to be, and it wasn't as easy as they thought it was going to be. And they went to the moon, and they did all these things, but then they came back, and they had to do, like, for instance, here's a big thing I like to come back to. The film that was used to film the moon footage should have been zeroed out due to cosmic background radiation, and it wasn't. They had no special camera. You can look up the type of camera was used, and the Nazis were already there. I like that theory. I like that idea. That doesn't bother me. That hypothesis isn't too bad for me. I'm comfortable with the idea that there was a German scientist who was spoken to, and he said that when after the war, where did you get all this technology to do all this stuff? And the gentleman responded we had outside help that assisted us with this technology. Now, if you ever look into it, into the Vril Society, they believe that they could contact other beings through medium and psychic powers, but the women needed to grow their hair long, and that was their cosmic antenna for communicating with these. And it was through these communications through the Vril Society that some of the technology and designs were made and built that German scientists came up with. So it's an interesting idea. But when we went to the moon, no, we didn't go to the moon. We went to the moon. They weren't able to film because at the time, because when we went to the moon, the type of film that was used would have been blanked out, and we'd have had nothing but blank cameras. So they did that. They're like, crap, we can't film this. So what they did was they actually did a filming in a studio, and that was what was presented to the people because they couldn't get the film in space, or there was something there they didn't want the people to see. And that's why they had to do it. So they commissioned Stanley Kubrick to come in and do what looked very similar to A Space Odyssey, 2001 A Space Odyssey. It's interesting that came out first. They saw the reaction of the public to it, and they're like, okay, cool. This looks like convincing space. Everyone's happy with it. Let's just give them that and call it reality. The reality is, though, is that we're not able to film this, and we don't want to look like boobs by not being able to show everybody our proof. And, or there was something up there that they didn't want people to see, such as the alien ships they say they found, or the alien body that they found inside the ship when there was the Apollo missions 17, 18, and 19, which 18 and 19, which weren't supposed to really happen. So, supposedly never happened, and that was to go back and get the bodies, and that's why we've never been back to the moon. There's also the idea that we were warned off when we got there that aliens...
Do you remember that song from Even Stevens? Where Ren, she had a fever and she had to...
That was my favorite episode, the influenza episode. The influenza episode on Even Stevens. It was my favorite one.
She actually had to do a report on the moon landing. So the whole time she's sleeping, she's having a dream that she's at school doing a whole report and music. And it's about, we didn't go to the moon in 1963, we went to the moon in 1962 or something like that.
Yeah, along those lines.
Yeah.
I don't feel fine we went to the moon in 1969, you know.
But it cracked me up so bad because the moment you started talking about that, that's what it reminded me of, was that episode. Every time you talk about the moon landing, it reminds me of Even Stevens.
Yeah.
That one episode, and that's how I remember.
Well, Jordan, I appreciate you jumping into the party a little late. That's okay. I'll quickly inform you what happened. For anyone who is joining late, the bad news is we woke up this morning to find out that Evie's grandmother passed away early this morning. And
my great-grandma.
I know. We'll just say grandma for shortening, just to make it easy. So her grandmother passed away, and it's terrible news to wake up to. But I don't see it as a tragedy. I just see it as bad news. Because
it was expected.
It was expected. We saw it coming. It wasn't like suddenly. She was comfortable. Definitely had her morphine drip on. So
morphine and Ativan.
No, not so many people are lucky to die in such a peaceful manner. You know, not everybody gets that opportunity. So while I appreciate everyone's condolences, to me it goes out to the people who don't have those comforts, who don't get the comfort of knowing and don't get the comfortability of knowing that their loved one wasn't in excruciating pain. Her age, she passed away. It was her grandmother. I apologize if I said it too quickly. 86?
Yeah, my great-grandma was 86
years old. 86 years old. And she made 86 laps around the sun with us.
She turned 86. She was my groundhog great-grandma.
Born on Groundhog's Day?
Yes.
How about that?
We called her every Groundhog's Day, of course, you know, just to wish her a happy birthday, but to also... Grandma, did you see your shadow today?
What a great age, isn't it, though? 60, 65, 70 for me sounds perfect. it's just comforting to know that she was comfortable. And again, that doesn't extend to everybody in this world, and that's a joy I think people miss out a lot. Is while we experience the pain of loss the same as others, I don't think people take the time to realize that it could be much worse, and it could be not as pleasant and uncomfortable for some. And for those out there that have to go through that, you know, my heart bleeds for you. It really does.
She was amazing.
Okay. Cool. I will definitely check that. Bub, you know, I want to look at it right now. Zooming in. Now, do remember this, though. If you're looking at a picture that's been zoomed in, you're looking at a composite image. So do remember that the image has been composited not only from one perspective, but from multiple perspectives. So while the perspective presented may not show gravitational lensing, it's still possible. Now, here's something, too. When people talk about we've never seen a picture of the Earth on CGI, that's not true. You can see full pictures of the Earth if you'd like to. They are available. But when they say composite CGI, remember that the planet is huge, and it takes, you have to pull back far enough to get a whole shot of it. So when they say composite, what they do is they snap a picture, snap a picture, snap a picture, snap a picture, put it together. That's a composite image. It's a full image. It's just like if you do a panoramic. Would you not say a panoramic shot is not a full image of it? Oh, that's CGI because it's not. It's composited. It's a panoramic shot. But what you're doing is you're just lining the pictures up to get a full perspective of it, which is all that they've done. So you can see a picture of Earth, a full picture of Earth. NASA's website has several of them. You can monitor that. The curve of space is real. The curve of the Earth is real. If the planet was flat, you know, I guess that affects nothing. And then what's the point of everything? The only thing I could ever think of is that if the Earth was flat, what purpose does that serve? Other than, I guess, maybe funneling some money into NASA. I guess you could use it as a secret project if you could convince others. But geez, the amount of lies you have to go on to and the scholarships given out, and you'd have to confront people. And of course, you know, I have a cousin who he's working on his PhD, and when he finishes, he owes NASA some years of work for one of his scholarships. So they would have had to brief him on, hey guys, just so you know, we're here to lie to everybody. Which I don't think everybody has access to people that work for NASA on that level or will work for NASA. He's a very intelligent young man. So it's just like that. You have to have a lot of people in on the lie. Then it's interesting, though, that the numbers we use, for instance, like not only if the Earth was flat, would we have to get contractors in on it because they're the ones who do excavating. You know, they do the sightseeing. Look at my nose. What about my nose?
It's there.
There it is. Look at my nose. Look at my nose. You want the juicy info? I can tell you the juicy info on UFO cover-ups. That's too easy. It's not hard to figure out what's going on with that one. Are there aliens? Yes. Are they visiting our planet? Yes. Are they interacting with us? Yes. Are they making our presence well known? No. Does the government know about them? Yes. What would hold all the water in on Earth if the Earth was flat? It would have to be a rim around it. Right. No, Steve. Now, Steve Bate, here's where they come into it, what they want to do. Now, don't get me wrong. The idea of a flat Earth is not the hypothesis of a flat Earth is not unworkable. And what would hold all the water in is that Antarctica, they believe, is not a mass on the bottom of the planet, but what it is it's a ring. Now, my argument for that one would be then, let's say you were down in Antarctica and you wanted to travel from, say, from the U.S. base, which, guys, by the way, I applied to go work down in Antarctica. I've been waiting. It was a 2-year waiting list. I just hit my 2-year mark, waiting to hear back if I'm going to be accepted ever to go. I don't think I can now because of my disabilities, but at the time I had applied to work to go down to Antarctica. So there's a U.S. base down in Antarctica, and that would be, say, similar right over here. Over here. Yep, in Antarctica. So that would be, let's say Antarctica is the mass. We're just going to call my hand Antarctica, and the U.S. base was over here. Now, I know that the Australians have a base over here, and the UKs have a base over here. So, and what would happen, though, is if I wanted to travel from here to here, that wouldn't be a problem, which they sometimes routinely do to make checks. But if the Earth was a ring and Antarctica was this giant ring, to travel in Antarctica to get from the American base to the U.S. or Australian base would be damn nearly impossible. And the Nazi base is my thumb. There you go. Actually, it would be on the top. New Schwabia would be over in this area. If we were looking at a map, imagine you guys are going to be looking at Antarctica. This is Antarctica, right? This is the whole of it. Over here would have been New Schwabia, where Germany took. They took the upper north southeastern region. They claimed as New Swabia. So not at the bottom, over here at the top. So to travel between the bases would be impossible. And what actually happens is, as communication, you would notice there would be delays in communication, which we don't observe because of the distance it would take to be a child. It's all owned by the Rothschilds. I know, more Jews. And I want to say that about that too, though. You know, if the Rothschilds and this huge Illuminati, Zionist, Jewish takeover of the world happened, I want you guys to know I didn't get the memo. Okay? So they're not sending me the memo and I'd be on board. Maybe I am part of the Rothschilds and I'm part of the Illuminati. Maybe this is just a way that this is what they asked me to do, was talk to you guys about these things. Maybe that's what they wanted. Maybe I am.
Throwing them off their game.
Operation Leave Out Bomb. You know what, though? That's good that you're doubting everything. You should doubt everything, but don't believe everything you see on YouTube, because I watch YouTube videos and I've gone back and watched videos that I've seen before, and I'm starting to finally see the lies in them. And I can spot the fake videos. There's so many fake videos out there of people setting things up. And I think that's why I like to keep my YouTube channel as genuine as possible. Because there's so many liars out there. And it's not that they're intentionally lying, but they're intentionally misleading to deceive. And that in itself, I think, is a dishonest act, is when you intentionally attempt to deceive somebody. It's a very dishonest act. With malice intent, I guess. I should say with malice intent. The attempt to deceive with malice intent is an unhonorable act. With malice intent. I don't think people set out to make YouTube videos with the intent to maliciously harm somebody, but they do it with the intent to pull the wool over your eyes, for sure. But that's okay. You know, it's okay. People like to be lied to. This is why Hollywood exists. It's because people want a fantasy. They want to be lied to in some way, shape, or form. If this is something that I'm only will think about, I will get crazy. Well, you know, it takes a lot of time to observe, and you have to really think. Distracted from reality, absolutely. They want distractions. And I think this is interesting too, though, is that the whole world is a sleight of hand game. It's a sleight of hand game, okay? They want you looking here while the magic is happening here. The real thing is going on here. It's all distraction. It's all distractions, okay? It's interesting, too, enough that this right here, this motion, people don't know that the moving of a hand in an arcward motion draws the eye. You guys have been watching my hand more than you've noticed or even really speculated. It's something interesting. Did you not know that? So that's why scientists, or magicians, when they say, and now we're going to use the magic of this, they've just distracted your eye. They used a hand motion to pull your eye over here when the trick is happening over here. I don't know why. It's just a human reaction to follow. The eyes want to follow a moving hand in an arcward motion. When you learn these things about people and natural abilities, you can learn to exploit these things that people do. I do it myself sometimes. It's fun to use psychology and trick people into getting what I want. It's fun. I enjoy doing it. Absolutely. How about that? Isn't it interesting that atoms are kind of in a smaller thing when observed, and everything seems to be, and remember, it seems to be, the universe is full of order in a way, chaos with order. And in that chaos, we see things. Nothing's bigger. Inside the atom are quarks, which are round, and inside the atom are nuclei, which move, particles, and all of these things. But I think the greatest thing is that if you think of the Earth in a two-dimensional thing, you would have a flat Earth, and when you move anything that's two-dimensional, a circle in a two-dimensional space into a three-dimensional space, you come out with a sphere, which is what our planet would be, which gravity pulls towards the center of, creating a sphere. It actually takes a certain amount of mass. I forget the formula to come up with what it'll take for a planet to be round. There's actually a certain amount of mass needed. That's why we find objects that are bigger than Pluto in the Kuiper Belt, but they deemed Pluto a dwarf planet, because if you saw these objects in the Kuiper Belt and they were bigger than Pluto, then you would also label them as planets. And this is why Pluto lost its status as a planet, was because we found objects outside in the Kuiper Belt which were much bigger. And then outside of the Kuiper Belt, you found the Oort cloud. Outside of the Oort cloud, we found some similar objects that are quite big there. We also do know that there is Neptune has a perturbator somewhere out inside the Kuiper Belt. And what a perturbator is something that's a large ball of mass that pulls against the gravity of Neptune. We see this observable. We just can't see it because it's far away, or it might not be receiving enough light to reflect back at us. However, there is a larger planet in the Kuiper Belt beyond Pluto. This is without a doubt. We know Neptune, something interrupts Neptune's orbit. It was thought that at first that Pluto would be the one to do that, and that was later discovered that Pluto didn't have enough mass, and that the gravitation in between Pluto and the Oort cloud, and I forget the name of Pluto's, Pluto is actually in a binary system. It's not in a, which most stars are in a binary system too, if people didn't know that. Most stars orbit each other. There's generally, anytime there's a star, there's two stars. It's very rare in the universe to find an independent star by itself. Pluto is a dog. It was also a planet, but they believe that Pluto and its moon were two moons of Neptune, and a wandering planet, a rogue planet, came into our solar system, was captured by our gravity, and it pulled those two moons out of Neptune's orbit into Pluto's orbit. That's why when you see Pluto sits like this, and normally a moon goes around like this, but Pluto and its moon are circling each other, so they're kind of in a symbiotic circle. That's why they said Pluto doesn't have enough mass to pull it. So we know, just by process of elimination, that beyond Pluto there is a larger planet in the Kuiper Belt capable of pulling on Neptune. So we know that. We know that that's a fact. And when I say fact, I don't mean like when kids say, oh, that's a fact, or I mean this literally, when they really mean figuratively, or they speculate. A fact. It's a fact. Something is pulling on Neptune. And to have that kind of pull must be X number of size. Therefore, you can determine it. It's just that the light isn't reaching it to reflect. Goofy is a dog as well. Yes, that is very true. So it's just all these things, guys. I'm sorry if I'm getting all technical and stupid on stuff. I know. This is me. I think about these things all the time. X. Ooh, I did say X, didn't I? Planet X. Well, see though, here's something what they wanted. Planet X has become a term for any kind of planet beyond. The reason they originally called it Planet X was because it would have been the 10th planet. 10 is, of course. Well, thank you. Yeah, I am a nerd. I am a big nerd. I'm a giant nerd. But I'm the kind of nerd that I was always nice to I'm not a squirrely nerd. That's the difference. I'm not a squirrely nerd. So see, perfect. You're right on point. Planet X. Now Planet X has been deemed any planet. They want to just call it now. Anything beyond there. Nibiru. I've heard the idea of Nibiru, but I watched people on YouTube for years talk about, oh, it's this month. Oh, it's this month. You know what? But honestly, if there was something that large and observable, that large coming into our solar system, you would be able to see it. You know, you can see Jupiter with the naked eye. Now, I have come to understand that it's called a red sun, which would be darker, so it's harder to see, and then it's coming from a different angle, so we're not able to observe it because it's up behind our thing. But we would still feel the effects of it today. You know, you would still be able to feel and observe. Like for instance, when the star Betelgeuse finally goes supernova, which we're expecting any day now, which it very well could have gone supernova already, and the light just hasn't reached here. But when Betelgeuse goes supernova, we're going to be able to observe it from here on Earth during the day. So you'll be able to observe a star like that. Every year the Earth's going to end. It's a great way to publish. I was thinking about writing my own end of the world book and like start coming up with my ideas for dates and when the world is going to end. Of course, it would be a total mockery of a book. Yeah, a spoof of a book. But I would write it in a scientifically speaking way where I try to sound educated on what I'm speaking about and deliver the most ridiculous thing I can think of in a nice, pretty package. Yes, Betelgeuse. No, Betelgeuse is a star. It's a big star. I believe it's classified as a red giant. No, excuse me. I believe it's a blue dwarf, and when it goes red giant, we'll be able to observe it with the naked eye. Betelgeuse is not a planet; it is a star. So when the planet Betelgeuse the star Betelgeuse goes supernova, we'll be able to see when it goes to its red supernova state. We'll be able to observe it. Maybe it is a red dwarf, or maybe it is a red giant right now, and when it collapses into a supernova, that's when we'll be able to observe it. I do believe that's correct. That's correct. It's a red giant, and when it collapses into its supernova, which is what happens is, which is interesting, is that as a, here's an interesting thing for you about gravity, since those who talk about flat Earth, there's no such thing as gravity. When a star begins to lose its mass, it gets bigger. And you're saying to yourself, how does that work? How does something get smaller but grow in mass? It's very simple. Gravity. As the star begins converting its hydrogen into helium, and then eventually the helium begins to fuse into other elements, what happens is the hydrogen burns off, which means the gravity becomes less because there's less mass to the planet. So what happens is then the star is able to expand because there's less gravity. But then once the gravity reaches the center of the star, finally fuses or creates fission into iron, the star collapses in on itself. So that's how a red dwarf, that's how our yellow sun will turn into a red dwarf. It will. It'll expand into a red dwarf and then collapse on itself into a white nova, and that's what's going to happen to the life of our star. It'll burn out. Thank you. Yes, Bob is absolutely correct. We are spelling it wrong. It is spelled, I guess Betelgeuse would be more precise to say it correctly, but it's pronounced Betelgeuse, but Betelgeuse. No. It doesn't shrink. It expands. It expands. It expands out to a red dwarf is cooler than a red giant is cooler than a blue dwarf. Because when it condenses its heat, it becomes more hot. When it expands, it cools as gravity weakens on it. And then once it finally gets an iron core is fused, because that's where every element on the Earth comes from, is from a star. We're all just stardust. We're all just the explosion of stars. And what happens is that it's why they say gold is rare. It's not rare. It's just hard to find. And there's two different things between rare means that there's not a lot of it, hard to find, or difficult to get to is difficult. But what happens is that a star, when it starts expanding, it's fusing. You fuse helium atoms together, and you'll make not helium. You fuse hydrogen, you can make helium. You fuse helium together with one more of these, and that creates this element, and vice versa. And you keep working down until you get all the way down into the heavy elements such as iron, gold, platinum, zinc, tungsten, all of those heavy elements on there. But iron being one of the heaviest, when a core reaches iron, it starts collapsing on itself. When it collapses in on itself, it starts forming all these rare metals. And then when it finally finishes collapsing, it explodes into a supernova, sending out all these rings of iron and gas and helium and hydrogen. And not hydrogen, because it won't happen. Not hydrogen, I apologize. Helium, iron, platinum, all of that spread out into the universe. Now, eventually, gravity brings it all back together into a solid core, because now it's a physical thing. It's no longer just a gas. And all that, right? CO2. What is CO2? Well, CO2 is O2 with a carbon atom attached to it. When people say plants make CO2 or oxygen, that's incorrect. They don't make oxygen, and neither do we breathe out CO2. We breathe out carbon dioxide that attaches to the oxygen that the plants then absorb. The plants will then metabolize the carbon attached to the O2 molecule and re-release the O2 molecule, feeding on the O2, on the C part of it. Supernovas can. There are instances, you are correct. There are certain circumstances where a supernova can create a neutron star. They can also create a magnetar, a quasar, and a pulsar. These are all different types of what can happen when a star collapses. There's different things that happen to a star when it collapses. It has to be of a certain size before a planet can collapse and do that. It has to be a certain size of a star. And if you ever want to go and say, our star is tiny. Our star is so tiny compared to some of the super giant red giants. Super red giants is what they're called. Super red giants. It would swallow our Earth in no time. So it's just all these things, man. It's just all this different stuff. You should see. But Tom, I thought you were my star. I think your father's a thief, Tom, because someone stole the star from the sky and put them in your eye. Pulsars are deemed to be neutron stars. No, I do believe... No. A neutron star has very high magnetic fields, like twisting magnetic fields everywhere. A pulsar is the ones that spin. And then a quasar and a magnetar are ones that spin with the pulsing and have the giant magnetic field. So they had to reclassify that when they learned it. And for the one time, there was a time in space where I believe it was the SETI Institute detected the first pulsar, and they thought it was alien life because it flashes in such a steady, like it was like every 3 seconds they were getting the signal, beep, 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 and they said anything that consistent must be of non-nature. Nothing in nature does that. And then they found out, yes, that a spinning star, which has like these things like cones of light, which would be radiation cones similar to like a lighthouse. And every time that spun past us and that light shone past the Earth, because it was so far away, gravity bent it and was able to get it to us. We were able to observe it through all the mass and density of the universe. Then we're able to... Bloody hell, did you go to school with the X-Men? No, we're not going to do it. We're not going to talk gravity anymore. No, man. I just read a lot. I observe a lot. I listen. And then I form my own opinion out of what I hear. The electric universe paradigm. Yeah, I've heard of that everything is held together through electromagnetism. But have you ever seen the chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored water? Oh, absolutely. And that's actually a great album, too. Not a bad album. I think that was, who was that? Papa Roach? Who was that? Who did that album? Who was that guy? It's all about the he said, she said. What was that song? Who was that? You don't leave me hanging like that. Limp Bizkit. Thank you, Limp Bizkit. I knew it was one of those bands I didn't like. Hot dog water. Fred Durst. Now you do know what the idea behind a chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored water is, correct? Because what happened was that's an actual pun. The band was talking about something and that wound up coming up. But a chocolate starfish is a pooper. It's your butthole. And hot dog flavored water, I think that has something to do with your wiener being in a glass of water or something. But yeah, chocolate starfish is a booty hole. Just so you know. It's his ass, absolutely. Butt mud. We call it mud butt. Mud butt. When you got diarrhea, you got mud butt. I like to eat corn because then I know when like it's all through. I'm like, oh, yep, dinner's out. Okay, and that's fine. They're onto something, sure, but now they need to take their hypothesis and test it. We know that the theory of electromagnetism can and does draw objects that are prone to... Everything is magnetic. So I give you that, Tom. Everything in the universe is magnetic, and they did an experiment where they were able to take heavy enough magnets and levitate a frog. So they have an idea. But what they have to do is they have to get the science behind it to back their theories up right now. And we continue to see that Einstein's theories are still being proven today with string theory. So while I say that there is a definite possibility to the electric universe possibility that it's all electromagnetism that draws us together, what we don't see is magnetism is, you would see, shouldn't it be, there should be something more observable and more measurable. There we go. That's all. I'm willing to believe. My opinions are willing to change on anything, but you've got to present me with the facts. You have to give me more information that I can use to determine. Now, am I going to believe somebody just on because they present to me a bunch of information? No. I want to take the information, just like this. I like to take the flat earth information and I try to blend the two. And I think I first started doing this when I was a kid, when I started learning about science, but then I was being taught about God. And I was trying to make the two match so that I could keep my beliefs in God and still have science as an irrefutable thing. But then people will say, oh, well, science is basically just like a religion too, because you trust men to tell you this answers and you have to have faith that they're giving you the correct information. And my response to this is that if we took religion and science, which science is not a religion, but if we took science and religion and we wiped out all the religion on earth and we wiped out all the science on earth, 1,000 years later, we would have new religions with new gods and new ways of serving them, But what we won't have is different physics. The physics will always remain the same. And in 1,000 years, they would rediscover the same science, and they would know that to be true. Okay, the measurements would still come out. The atomic weights of elements would still be the same. So that's the difference, I think, between a religion. Is if we wiped out a religion, we'd have a new one take its place, and it would be totally different. If we wiped out science and attempted to rediscover everything, we would still discover the same answers. And that's why science is not a religion. It's just truth. It's always working towards truth. Now, science isn't always right, and I don't believe there's ever been a scientist that's ever said this is the answer. They've always said we found more information, and based on what we have, and that's what you have to base science on, is what we know at the time. For instance, when radio waves were invented, nobody knew what they were going to be for. Nobody knew what the possibility could be done with radio waves were, because nobody knew what could be done with it yet. And now later on, we see the effects of what would have. But at the time, somebody might have said to a scientist, you're inventing what? That's going to do nothing. You're not going to do anything with that. Nothing can come from that. And it's only because nobody knew that there could be something that could come from that, because the discoveries and the inventions that were made around that invention would later be put into place. For instance, we enjoy Wi-Fi right now thanks to Nikola Tesla, who actually did a lot of amazing things. We still use his patents today. We still use his ideas and his theories. And again, Wi-Fi was invented back in like the 1900s. And it's all thanks to Nikola Tesla, who died broke, penniless, and in a hotel room with thousands of ideas on how to draw free energy. There's energy in the universe. There's energy in everything. It's how you want to get it out. And he came up with the method, and it was silenced. And Nikola Tesla is one of the most underrated, underknown heroes of our time. And I don't think that he gets enough recognition for what he did. He was living in a hotel. He didn't even have an apartment. He had a hotel, and they had the manager unlock the wall safe and took all his notes. Like the moment he died, they were in there to take all his notes. So you are correct on that, David Smith. There's just so much. There's so much. Similar with the guy who was in Florida who did the Coral Castle, and two little boys, remember, said they saw him with cones. He did something with. Now, see, though, here's where I think we can get into the gravitational and magnetism. You can use magnetism to overcome gravity, can't you? So if we can use magnetism to levitate things, that means magnetism is a stronger force than gravity, but it is a different force. And that's because gravity isn't really a force, it's a falling. We're always falling to the center, but you can use an outside force to push against opposite and equal. Gravity pulls at this much of a strength, based on the weight of the planet, size of the planet, and if you can make a strong enough magnet that can repel at this, it'll overcome gravity. It's very simple. Right? Why didn't that Tesla melt when orbiting Earth? Oh, you mean the Tesla car? Why would it melt? Why would it melt, Matt? When you launch it into space, you would have the possibility of burning up. But once it's in space orbiting, there's no air to create friction to create heat. I mean, I'm sure it's getting some outside radiation, so I'm sure it's heating up in a certain way, but probably not enough that the vacuum of space and the negative degree temperature would overcome it. One little magnet can overcome gravity force. What little magnet? I mean, you can take a little magnet and move it over things, and it's not always enough to lift. You have to get within. It's like this. When you have place a penny down or a metal object down, you have to move the magnet closer, 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 closer to it until the strength of the magnet is finally enough to overcome the pull of gravity. But from a certain distance, it's not. Gravity is now the stronger force, and when we start getting closer and closer, the stronger force takes over. Magnetism, regardless of the strength of the magnet, overcomes that. The weight and mass is what you have to remember. And remember, weight and mass are two different things. So when you have a magnet that finally gets close enough that the strength of the magnet overcomes the pull of gravity, that's when we have dink. But it won't happen until then. Now, you can get a stronger magnet that will then overcome the pull of gravity at a closer distance. But if you can't say that you can't have one without the other, you can't say that magnetism, it just doesn't work. Again, though, like with helium, helium is lighter. Is the pull on gravity, because the mass of an object is what gravity pulls on. Okay, and the center of gravity's pull is from somewhere like 10 miles inside the center of the Earth, and I am now inches. So of course, there's the difference. It's the closing of the distance. Isn't it amazing, though, that the pull of gravity is so strong that to get that little magnet to lift it, you have to be damn near on top of it. That's the strength of it. But we can get a more powerful magnet and do it in a foot. But you remember the pull of gravity, which remember is just a falling thing, that's coming from like, what, how many miles inside the center of the Earth? Right, and how, see, there you go. But you got to remember, it's mass versus weight, which are two different things. And that's where a lot of people get the two confused, and they're like, well, the mass of the Earth, E equals mc squared. Do people even know what that means? Do you guys understand what E equals mc squared means? So you have to realize, Bub, that of course, it's the distance. You have to be this close, and yet you're miles away to overcome that. You don't know what E equals mc squared means. Well, I will be happy to tell you, Tom. E equals mc squared means energy is equal to matter squared by the speed of light. So what does that mean? That means that your body, energy is equal to matter times the square of light gives us our final numbers. But what it's basically breaking it down to is E equals MC equals energy equals matter, and then you can also reverse it, which means matter is equal to energy. So when you take an atom of plutonium, which stores this much matter, and when you release it, there's a releasing of energy. Certain mass stores energy. Your body is made of energy. You can't destroy energy. It can only change forms. This is why my idea that your brain has electricity in it, has an energy form, and when you die, that is what is your soul. Your consciousness is an electrical charge. That charge might continue on. I don't know, but that's at least what I think. So if energy is equal to matter and matter is equal to energy, you remember the replicators on Star Trek, and they would say, hot tea, and all of a sudden hot tea would form. That could come from raw energy. If you took raw energy and arranged the atoms in certain ways, you could form whatever you would like. Equally, we can take a piece of wood and we can burn it and release its physical matter into the form of heat energy, heat energy would go off to be some kind of other energy, and energy never changes. It dies. It always changes forms. It just changes. So right? And that's not a magnet, right? That would be the thing. It's odd, too, though, that everything falls towards the center. The burning bush, you want to know the burning bush? Moses got stoned. I think it was a mistranslation. He didn't hear a voice from a burning bush. He was burning a bush and heard a voice. It's just a mistranslation. So does energy ever get lost? No, energy is never lost. You can't destroy energy. You can only make it change forms. That's all. Matter can become energy, and energy can become matter. So when they say that the Big Bang happened and from nothing came something, that is absolutely fact. You can create nothing. You can create something from nothing. Did we answer the Tesla? Why the car didn't burn up? Because there was no friction from air resistance to cause heat. So in the instance, for instance, my idea that the creator, if I had to say that there's an idea of a creator in the universe, that it would be a being of pure energy with consciousness of pure energy. And it could lower some of its vibrations of that energy down into a way that physical matter could be obtained. And through that, a physical form would be shaped. Now, this being would never be able to completely turn itself into matter or would lose it. But through giving some of itself up to become matter, when that matter is finally converted back into energy, it can take the consciousness and experience observed of a physical universe back to the original being of pure energy, thus enriching the being's life and the personalities and the ideas and the thoughts and what would be the souls of others, enriching the experience of, I guess, like a Gaia. Bob, it was so much fun having you. Thank you. I always do appreciate when there's someone willing to go against me, because then we have something more interesting to talk about. And I love that you were able to do it with consistency. You stood by your beliefs. Good for you. And you didn't let me slip. And when I made a mistake, you corrected me. Good for you. Good for you. So thank you, Bub. You guys have a great day. No, that's not true. No, David. No, David. We can create, from energy alone, you can create all matter. You can create all matter from energy. So if there was a point in the universe where a specific amount of energy finally lowered its frequency and resonated to a point where matter was able to be formed, you would see kind of an explosion of matter coming out of this singularity point in space, kind of like a Big Bang. And from that, matter could explode out into the universe. And so, yes, you can very much create something from nothing. It's not nothing because we're creating it from the energy, but we're not creating it. It does create. It can be done. It's. No, David, you're not blocked. Why would I block you? Oh, does it? I'm sorry. Oh, I did not know that. I apologize. No, nobody's ever blocked. I'm sorry, David. I didn't realize you were doing a song. I just thought that was just some cute notes you threw in there. Wow, guys, we almost did a 3-hour today. I think we're going to do 3 hours. Is that okay for everybody? I hung out for quite a bit, as much as I could. I know Evie's got some stuff to get ready to go do. I had a great time hanging out with all of you. This was so much fun. Well, good. So we got 15 more minutes to hang out, chat a lot. Hopefully we covered a lot today, guys. I'm sorry if I spent a lot of it talking about guns. It's just, they've been flooding everything with it. It's impossible not to hear about it right now. And I apologize for not using my powers of reason to not try to block that out. They got to me. But we got off of that, and we got into an amazing discussion about space and physics and science. Now, I am not a scientist, and I am not a physicist, and I in no way have any kind of paperwork that would back up my ideas or my thoughts, but I do have reason, and I have ability to reason. Now, if anybody later on is watching this and they have anything they would like to dispute, please do so. Dispute in the comment section. I'm going to take everything you say that you were saying in a polite and well thought out manner. I would expect you to do the same for me, which means that we don't need to get to personal insults, and we don't need to have slings and arrows launching at each other. We can always discuss things in a reasonable manner. The second I see someone unable to discuss things in a reasonable manner, I will kill the conversation. Friends, I will extend a couple of indiscretions against me before I kill the conversation. But when someone goes to slings and arrows, it means they're done. They're done. They have no more. They have no more thought to add to it. They've now taken up to the, well, you stink. And once you get to that point, the conversation is over. And I've had to do that. And I've had a friend, he insulted me once on a conversation, and I let it slide, and we kept having the conversation, and then he did it again. And that's when I said, we're done. We're done, man. I'm not discussing this with anyone. You've taken up to personal insults, and then he turned on personal insults. Well, this about Donald Trump is an insult. I was like, no. That's an insult in general. You have personally attacked me. It's over. It's over. You're no longer able to. It's almost like I have to mercy stop because the person is no longer able to defend themselves, and it would be wrong for me to continue to embarrass the person beyond belief. So I stop because it's merciful. It's merciful when someone gets to the point where they have to use name calling to stop the conversation because they're done. They've finished. They have no more. They've run all the explanations they have and their ideas, and it's over. And if you're still talking, you win. Even if you end the conversation because it's over. They've exhausted their abilities, and they've now moved to attacks, and it's over. And that's when you end the conversation and let them know I can't do this anymore, and I'm not going to. This one is over. Have a good day. But they can always come back on another conversation. We can talk, and I'm always willing to reset the clock. Because the next conversation, I won't ever hold it against you. But the moment you move to slings and arrows, we're done. Oh, the Jufro? I say it all the time, David. This is my Jufro. Seth Rogen is like the not-so-cool version of me. I guess he would be the leftist version of me, and I would be the right version of him. I would love to meet Seth Rogen. I wish some guys would, if you have Twitter or anything like this, tag him, hashtag or at Seth Rogen. Here's your twin. He's way cooler. I've messaged him a million times. I'm like, dude, look, we shop at the same store. Jufro. We're both also, he's Jewish Canadian. I'm kind of Jewish Canadian. So it's interesting. See, I don't say I'm right because I kind of lean a little more to the center because I know the right doesn't like pot. And we all know my stance on that. But I also think in personal responsibility and not social responsibilities. I'm back and forth on certain things. It's just however I feel. I'm on whatever issue I want. How I feel is how I want. I won't be defined by what side I take. I think that between Democrats and Republicans fighting is like arguing over where we're going to put the chairs on the Titanic. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't matter. Let's just talk about what we can do to save this ship. Everything is for. I don't know. For me, like in my life, I don't like odd numbers, and I've always had things happen to me in waves of 3, whether it be good or bad. Things happen in 3s. I don't know. Zack and Mira Make a Porno, one of my favorite movies. Sausage Party, he was the voice of the hot dog, Tom. He was also in the movie Knocked Up. He was in the movie This Is the End. He was on the show Freaks and Geeks. He's been in some other smaller roles in a few movies here and there. He was in the movie 40-Year-Old Virgin. He was the guy who hooked up with the crazy girl Beth. Yeah. Yeah, the Jew-fro. Yeah. Oh, I know. Trust me, there's nothing you could ever say about Jews that could ever offend me. I've heard it all a million times, and I probably say half of them. So I'm thinking that, yeah, you're fine. You're fine to say anything like that. Don't bother me whatsoever. Nothing. He's a funny cat. Yeah. She said to him, oh, I love your curly hair. Do you use anything on it? And he goes, oh, yeah, it's called Jew. 23 with the movie Jim Carrey, 23, one of his first serious roles. The number 23, but that actually works out in anything. You can find patterns in anything. It just depends on how hard you look for the pattern. Now see, there we go, Tom. You mean the word hypothesis with all his hypotheses, not theories, because they weren't tested. And actually, when you spell the word theories, drop the I, add the Y, I-E-S. I am, Peter. I am Jewish. I don't follow Judaism, which is a big misconception a lot of people have. They mistake being Jewish with following the religion of Judaism, which most Jews do happen to follow. I do not. There you go. Perfect. Theories. The difference between a theory and a hypothesis is a theory has been tested and proven to show working in a model consistently, and a theory is just an idea. And a hypothesis is an idea that someone came up with and has yet to test. So there you go. How bad do I have the OCD? It's not as bad as you guys think. It's not that bad. I don't like volume on odd numbers. There's just some weird little quirks I have, but I wouldn't say I'm absolutely OCD, but I will not have volume on an odd number. I refuse. I will leave the room if someone won't change it. I bought a car specifically with bars for volume, so it's just like little blocks, so I wouldn't have to see the number. It doesn't matter if it's an odd number of blocks, that doesn't bother me. I don't want to see an odd number. I don't like odd numbers. So, and I think that stems from being that when I was a kid, my brother and I, there was always 2 of everything. You always bought 2 of everything. 1 for each, 1 for everybody, 1 for each, equal. So, yeah, I have my tics, I would say. I wouldn't say I have OCD, and I think that gets thrown around a lot when people say, oh, I'm OCD about this. OCD is like, woo! They can't help it. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. That's OCD, where they have to. It like almost physically hurts not to. People just have quirks that they like to impose as their. I do not like odd numbers. Can I tolerate it? Because I have tolerated it, and I will tolerate it for Evie when she's sleeping. If the TV has a program on that's loud, I will turn it down to 1, but I don't like it. Right. Well, with the Jewish thing, like, for instance, like being a Jew is DNA testable, verifiable. Evie did her DNA test, and they were able to identify that she is anywhere from. It's just one more of those misconceptions that people have. Again, you can test DNA, verifiable test to identify people as Jewish. But Judaism, anybody can convert to Judaism and follow the Jewish faith, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I like the Jewish faith. It's a very understanding faith. It always requires that you question everything, so I kind of like that. Christianity kind of doesn't, and then Muslim religions kind of don't want you questioning anything, but the Jewish religion does always want you questioning everything. So I kind of like that aspect, but I don't think that I should have to follow all these other stupid rules that make no sense to me. But if it makes sense to you and that's what you feel, then obviously the rule to you is not stupid, just is to me. And it makes no sense to me. And if something is, I guess stupid would be the wrong word. I apologize. I'm going to say it's ignorant to me. It's ignorant. And that's not a bad word, being ignorant. It just doesn't make sense to me in any way, shape, or form. So, but if that's what people want to do, who am I to tell you no, right? Remember, I'm always back to do whatever you want as long as you cause no harm. to others. You can harm yourself all you want. Put whatever chemicals, completely okay. Yeah. So light switches on the Sabbath day? No, I don't worry about any of that junk. Anybody who actually tries to keep the Sabbath according to the law, it's damn near impossible. Kudos to those who do or who strive to. I'm sure there's some are out there who do, but it's very difficult if you wanted to keep the law, which is over 900 more rules that are applied to those who follow Judaism, which is very, very difficult to follow. And I'm not going to lie to you, I love cocktail sauce, and shrimp is delicious. So are double cheeseburgers, which I wouldn't be allowed to have if I followed the Jewish faith. You can't have a cheeseburger. And not because there's anything wrong with beef or a cheese, it's that you can't have the two together. You're not allowed to have beef and cheese together in the same meal. It's just these really real rules. Yeah, that's religion you got. One life, live it, but don't doing bad as demanded, ask my kids. Ha! Well, that's true, I'm sure. And I myself don't have any children, so I can never speak from a parental aspect of anything, because I myself am just a big child. But I got kudos to anybody who has kids. I commend you guys for being able to do something. I started thinking about this the other day, too, and I think we might wrap up on this note. And I'm going to say something that might sound controversial to you guys, but once I finish explaining it, I think you guys will understand. Children are a burden. They're a burden. They're a heavy burden. But they're a burden of love. Yeah. People talk about, oh, my life is so great because I have kids. No, it's a burden on your life. It really is. And it burdens down your life, and it takes your time. It takes your energy. But it's okay because you do that out of love for this person. And it's wired into your DNA to love these people. It's because you want to pass on your genes. But they are a burden. They're not a blessing. They're a burden. But it's a burden you wanted. You wanted this burden because it's a burden of love. Joining the military is a burden. Okay? It really is. But I did it because I cared for something. Cared for some, either others, myself. I cared. But they are a burden. Now, they don't feel like that. They are that, Peter. And it's okay. You're not saying anything wrong. I think Joe would agree with me, too, almost on this one. It's nothing wrong to say that a child is a burden. Children are burdens. It's their job to burden you. That's their job. They're here to literally rely on you for everything. When somebody relies on you with something, they're putting a burden on you. And again, we go back to where I've spoken before about words being good and bad words. There's no such thing. It's just that a burden is not a bad word. Having a burden on somebody is not a bad thing. It's okay to have a burden on you. But they are a burden. They're a burden of love. And because they take more far than they ever give you. So, Joe, I'm sorry you're stopping in late to the party. We're getting ready to wrap it up in 5 minutes. We covered so much stuff, guys. I'm going to be on later on tonight playing some Fortnite. I don't know if I'm going to be live streaming it or not. I gotta look and see. Doing these multiple live streams, if it's still hurting my numbers. Which it doesn't appear to be horrible. Nope, I'm losing more again. I can only do one live stream a day for right now. Maybe I can just record it and put it up later. Oh, yeah. Joe, we got a great one covered here. So I want to thank again Gary for another super chat donation. Thank you so much, Gary. I will let you know, Joe. I'll let you know, man. You get home, get with the family, get some grub in your bub. Relax, de-stress. Don't worry about me. Gary's always too kind. He hits me with a super chat at least once a month, and he's come through with 3 in the last 2 days. So some of you need to step it up. But I'm kidding. But we covered. We talked about space. We talked about gun control. We talked about responsibility. I think we covered a little bit of Judaism. We covered some philosophy. We covered flat Earth. We spoke a little bit about gravity. We spoke about how stars formed. We spoke a little bit about SETI. Guys, we covered, this is better than PBS. And for those who don't know what PBS is, it's our public broadcasting service. I guess that would be similar to your BBC, but everybody knows PBS sucks. Well, Sesame Street was on PBS, so it's not that bad. But today was a good chat. I had a great time hanging out with everybody, and we went to a 3-hour, which is different. Oh, well, thank you. What did he say? Peter said, but after chemical poisoning and PTSD, I found this family feeling I had nothing to live for. They gave me something to get up for each morning, and for that, I never regret it. You are a good bloke. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tom. You guys are good people, too. You don't realize that I'm just the man behind the camera. I'm just some guy sitting in my living room. That's all I am, dude. Nobody special. Just a person with my own thoughts and my own ideas, with a great group of people that come and hang out with me when I decide to just let it all out and be stupid. Well, there's the TARDIS right back there. I don't know if you guys could ever see it. I always keep the TARDIS behind me. That's the TARDIS. The Doctor Who's TARDIS engine is a black hole. How about that? BBC does not suck. You guys got some cool programming over there. I'll watch it. I've watched some cool BBC shows. Are you free? I'm free. I'm Humphreys and I'm free. Mr. Lucas was always my favorite. And boy, I'm not going to lie to you. When I first saw Are You Being Served, Wendy Richards was looking good. Looking good. You have to buy a TV license. Bigfoot documentaries. I wasn't aware that there were Bigfoots in... Are there? Is there an idea of a Bigfoot in the BB in Britain? I don't know. Well, guys, all right, we're on our final minute, so let's give out some big shout outs to everybody. We want to thank Tom as always for stopping by, Pat for coming by to hang out and always give us a good insight. Joe for showing up late, even though that's cool. David Smith for always stopping in and giving us some great info and great detail, talking with us. David Beach, who is always a wonderful person talking and hanging with. Peter Winthorpe, who continues to push the envelope for us, and I've always wanted to have that. Gary, who seems to be my my producer and my financier. Thank you so much, Gary. To everybody, David Smith, if I missed your names or if I didn't catch you on this one, I'm just going through trying to pick up the last names of everybody who was here. Seems we had a decent group. You guys make this happen. You really do. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't. Bub, who stopped in. Bub Elvis, thank you so much for all his insights and thoughtfulness. I know Shelly was here earlier. Thank you so much, Shelly, who stopped in. Is there anybody else I'm forgetting? Gary, Pat. I'm sure there are, but it won't let me go that far back. It was amazing to have everybody. Thank you guys so much for everything you guys do. I'm going to get ready to get out of here. Remember, let's see, we've got 12 days till SIP is here, till the Joe and a Jay show is on and in full swing. So I'm very excited about that. Very excited to see you guys. I'll be back tomorrow, as usual, for the next one. Thank you so much for wasting some of your life with me. You guys have a great day.